OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
7:30 on this Friday morning. You're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Eoin and Adrian with you right the way through until 10 o'clock this morning, and it's another packed morning, especially on the football front. Just 16 days left in the Premier League season, so we're squeezing the life out of every last talking point we possibly can with just over 2 weeks left in the season. We've got Andy Mitten coming your way, basking in the afterglow of Manchester United's brilliant performance last night against Aston Villa. We've got Caoimhe O'Neill from the Liverpool Echo, basking in the afterglow of Liverpool winning the title 2 weeks ago. And we've got Phil Egan and his Monday morning headlines. We do have plenty more besides. We've got the Roscommon Mt Rushmore. We've got plenty of other stuff happening in the newspapers as well. You can tweet us at Off The Ball if you've got any opinion on the football or anything for that matter. Adrian Barry, how are you?
Morning, Eoin.
I'm going to ask you this really annoying question now. How much did you learn about Manchester United last night?
That they're the most exciting team in the Premier League at the minute, Eoin. Like, I think we can't offer enough hyperbole in the direction of Manchester United in a season that's done and dusted. They're really setting it alight. I mean, obviously, look, I'm being slightly facetious. They've a lot to play for, and they probably are, actually, the most exciting team in the Premier League at the minute. Like, Liverpool have obviously at times since the return of sport come back slightly, and some of the other teams around them are obviously flailing a little bit. Chelsea amongst them, Man City to a degree. So yeah, they've got a bunch of kids that are unbelievable, that are going to be prospects, that are going to be top players on for the next 10, 12 years potentially, some of them more. So we'll see. Yeah, but like, I don't know, it's wild, isn't it? Like, sport is absolutely wild. I was looking at that game last night, looking at the reaction to it on the TV, online, and like, we're hailing this Manchester United team as the second coming of all thing that's been great about United since 1992. Like, it's amazing. Like, it isn't that long ago, and I know there wasn't that much football played, to be fair, in the meantime, but it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about United, Solskjaer particularly, being a busted flush. When were United going to sell Pogba was the question. Now, I mean, potentially they'll sign him up for a new deal. They had no chance of making the top four. All the momentum was with them at the minute. They could even catch both Chelsea and Leicester the way they're going at the minute. I don't know, the kids are better than 92. They've all the reasons in the world to be joyful. Sport's a mad funny thing.
There was plenty of signs of positivity before the break, and they've got better since the break, which is the thing. The opportunities afforded to kids to stamp their own mark on the team, to actually ensure that they hold on to the jersey in the team, has been greater than ever before. This is an enforced break in football that doesn't involve a transfer window for the first time ever. And this was the opportunity then that was afforded to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to give the opportunity to the kids, to allow them to be a new signing, to use that terrible phrase. Like, I know Mason Greenwood was brilliant all season, but he's gone to a whole new level. He's put on bulk. He's become a better player over the course of the break. But crucially, as you mentioned, over the period of months that we've had no football, there must have been some mending of bridges going on with Paul Pogba. There definitely seemed to be a sense before the break that whatever was going on, it was even worse than what we were seeing. Now, what we were seeing wasn't great. We were seeing a player on the pitch who was underperforming consistently. We saw Graham Souness rip him a new one every single week on Sky Sports. Some people may actually say he deserved that. After the break, this has changed quite a bit, and over the last few games, he's actually getting better. So, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer deserves the credit for quite an amount of this, doesn't it? This is a really, really good display of man management, I would have thought.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. I suppose it deserves asking if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is a tactical genius, like in the way that he's turned this around, and that's probably not really the case. Like, is he a consistent Champions League winning class manager? I'm not really 100% sure that he is, but maybe his greatest achievement is in exactly that, in been able to bend the ear of Paul Pogba, get him to play, operate as he's operating as one of the best players on the pitch last night, a highly functioning, I should say. I don't want to be disparaging towards him. Midfield, like, he's ticking along. You watch him after the game last night, he's talking about things like, we have to work hard. He's talking about the greater good of the team. He's talking about the momentum that might get them into the Champions League. Like, Roy Keane doesn't obviously turn up his nose at the opportunity to have a pop at him about social media and the post-match analysis, but, some things never change. But, yeah, like, it is a case now, I think, and we can talk to Andy Mitten about it later on, of, like, how long can United sign this guy up for? Or maybe there's a chance to, like, cash in. Now his stock is unbelievably high. They know that overall, since he's been at United, through the 14 managers they've had since his return, his attitude maybe hasn't been always what it should have been. And maybe now that his stock is so high, it's the chance to cash in and, pull in Messi, pull in Sancho, pull in whoever they're pulling in.
Yeah, it does seem that they're going to be a little more incubated from the effects of the pandemic than other clubs. They're still going to take a hit, but if other clubs basically will need to sell players before Manchester United. Manchester United are going to be last on the list of clubs who will need to sell players to up the cash in their coffers. The one thing that might actually concern a few Manchester United fans is that the sort of Alexis Sanchez type player who are still contracted technically to Manchester United, they're probably going to be due a bigger wage packet again because of the fact that they'll have Champions League bonuses, which is the weird irony in all of this, that they got rid of the player to qualify for the Champions League, and they end up having to pay that player a little bit more. But as you say, we'll get into that with Andy Mitten a little bit later on. The other thing coming up after 9 o'clock, it is a Friday morning, is Mt Rushmore. Today is Roscommon, Adrian. Can I say that this is your second county?
No, you couldn't say that at all, Eoin. I have absolutely no tethering to Roscommon in the slightest. Like, it's, I am no Percy French, Douglas Hyde, Chris O'Dowd, or Ming Flanagan on.
I forgot. Yeah, sorry. Just first of all, run us through the non-sporting candidates for the county. Is that the Mount Rushmore?
That's it. That's. I'm sure there are others in there. Oscar Wilde's father was from Tulsk, I think. Certainly from Roscommon somewhere. So it has birthed one of the greatest wordsmiths of all time. But yeah, no, I'm in close proximity to the county. That's really, there's not much more I can say than that. I have no heritage in the place or no bind to it whatsoever.
You're on the border. You're from Athlone, so you were on the Roscommon border.
I know, but there are areas on the borders of places, and it doesn't mean that one has any connection to them whatsoever. Like, my father is from Galway and bit of Longford, and my mother's from Mayo, and I'm very firmly from Westmeath. There's like this thing crops up with Quinlan when he's on every other week, and he's like giving it socks about the fact that I'm a Connacht fan. The one sort of slight caveat to all of this is that, like, Buccaneers, the rugby team, have sort of really muddied the waters for me. Because the clubhouse is, you could literally, with a decent catapult, fire a stone from my back garden into Buccaneers Rugby Club. And the Suits, at some point or another, decided that Connacht wasn't strong enough, and here was a great strong team that was sort of not that far from the province, and they just hooked them into it. So a lot of my mates would have, we would have supported Buccaneers, and then you would, they went on to...
So you are a Connacht fan?
No, I'm not.
Finally, we've got to the bottom of this, at long last.
Some of them went on to support Connacht, whereas I stood firm with the idea that the fact that I'm from Leinster would have been, just because a bunch of Suits had decided that Buccaneers were going to play their rugby in a different province, wasn't going to dictate where my loyalties lay on.
So you can throw a stone to Connacht Rugby from where you live. So geographically, you're a Connacht Rugby fan, but on a GAA sense, you're a...
I shouldn't be surprised that you're letting the, non-facts get in the way of the story here. But
is there not some sort of even recognition of the county, like if you live near the border of somewhere, you always build up a rivalry with that place? I don't want to say a hatred of that place, but is it just like the idea of Roscommon doesn't come anywhere near your consciousness when you're growing up?
I know, it's growing up, like, Roscommon football was growing up and into adulthood everywhere was always stronger than Westmeath, barring a very slight window in the 2000s at football. So, like, there was definitely that. Geez, the era of, like, Dermot Earley and the McManuses and the like, an incredible team there. So yeah, you were looking at them thinking, Jesus, they're great, but they might as well, honestly, have been a million miles away. Like there was no great connection. I never really felt like the Athlone is split, as people will be well aware, in about 75% of Westmeath, and then the far side, as us Westmeath people would call the Roscommon, and I understand that the expression goes vice versa. And so that's kind of the way the county split. But like there was never. There was never really any reason to be. We would have had more Athlone. People would have had more rivalry with Mullingar than we would have had Roscommon, to be honest with you.
That makes sense as well. But there are a couple of bona fide Roscommon heads joining us later on. We're going to have John Caulfield with us and Shane K. Curran as well. So there's going to be no dispute about where their allegiances lie. They're firm Roscommon men, and they'll be picking the Mt Rushmore later on. Let us tell you the full running order then of what's coming up this morning on OTB AM. So at 8 o'clock, we're going to get stuck into Monday's headlines today. That is Phil Egan's slot, where he puts his neck on the line and tells you what is definitely going to happen this weekend in the Premier League. We've got the sports pages and stories of the day then at 8:20 this morning. Andy Mitten for Manchester United fans this morning coming up at 8:45. It'll be interesting to get his take as well on what Manchester United are going to do in the transfer market this summer. Caoimhe O'Neill then from the Liverpool Echo will be talking about the Premier League champions and the Roscommon Mt Rushmore, as I've already mentioned, with Cake and Caulfield. Right, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. We don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. Aston Villa 0, Manchester United 3 was the full-time score last night. It was live on OTB Sports, and Dundalk boss Vinny Perth joined Nathan on commentary. And we'll hear from Vinny in just a moment. First though, here's how the lads saw the game.
It's going to be a penalty kick for Bruno Fernandes, and he plays it low into the bottom left-hand corner and scores for Manchester United. Against the run of play, United lead Aston Villa by 1-0. Bruno Fernandes from the penalty spot. Back to Greenwood again, opens up for Mason Greenwood. Manchester United score their second, and the teenager has done it again. Mason Greenwood. Flying counter-attacking football from Manchester United. And that is devastating for Aston Villa. From one end of the pitch to the other, United flew forward. Martial to Fernandes to Greenwood. And it was a smashing, power-packed finish from Mason Greenwood from the edge of the area. And Manchester United well on course for victory now. It's Aston Villa 0, Manchester United 2. Pogba on the edge of the area, and it is 3-0 to Manchester United. Paul Pogba from 25 yards out. Aston Villa totally switched off from the corner kick. Bruno Fernandes spotted Pogba totally in space, the freedom of Villa Park, and he just took one touch and then side foots it with his right foot from the edge of the area, and it's 3-0 to Manchester United, and this game is done and dusted. Alright, so Manchester United, the bandwagon keeps on rolling. They're within a point of Leicester City in 4th place in the Premier League. A comfortable 3-0 victory against Aston Villa. Vinny Perth was alongside me watching this. I say comfortable, but with half an hour gone, Villa had hit the post. Jack Grealish had missed a good chance. They were starting to get it, United, and then Bruno Fernandes goes to ground. That initially we thought was a clear-cut penalty kick, but the second you look at a replay, as VAR did, you see that as he twisted his body, his leg went right down on the Villa player, and that will be the big talking point. Should it have been a penalty?
No, it's nowhere. It's nothing like a penalty. It looks it live, to be fair to the referee, but that's why they brought in VAR, and it's got to be overturned. And even still, somebody is sitting in a studio looking at that and leaving it as a penalty. That makes no sense. And you can see Dean Smith very, very upset about it. You can imagine if the whole end was packed as well while that happened, there would have been a lot of angry Aston Villa fans. It's very disappointing for Villa. They were in the game, but once the goal went in, they've just given up the ghost, and they've accepted their fate far too easy, and it's worrying times for them. Was it brilliant attacking play from Fernandes to earn the penalty kick? Did he trick the referee? Was it a dive? Do you think he knew what he was doing to the defender when he put his foot on him? No, I don't think so. I think it's like, to be fair, he could be booked for the tackle. It studs onto a shin. I think he tried to roll over the ball. He tried to trick as such, and he's just ended up connecting with the Villa defender. It's just a free out. It's simple as that, and it changed the game in United's favour. He had been really sluggish in the first half an hour. They were taking too many chances at the back, and Villa pressed them high a couple of times and turned the ball over. And this decision has changed the game, and ultimately then United have been very good. That front four now is very, very exciting, and it's going to be interesting, and the bandwagon of Manchester United supporters are going to love it.
Yeah, and they really did kick on from there as well. Mason Greenwood, what a player. Was emerging pre-lockdown, but since lockdown, 3 Premier League games in a row he's scored in now. 18 years of age, 9 Premier League goals, 16 in all games. And just the quality of his overall performance, his link-up play, his intelligence off the ball, and now as well, having bulked up a bit over the lockdown, the power he has in his shots with both feet.
Yeah, we see him off the left. The keeper made a good save just before the goal, but for me, the area that he's improved, and I spoke to somebody in the youth setup in Manchester United, and he felt that his movement off the ball had to improve to become a top player. And you think he's a 9, he's probably an out-and-out centre forward in time, but he's someone who can play off another striker. But he's now added to his game, probably because who he's played with in Rashford and Martial, turning up in different areas, coming into that sort of half position, receiving the ball on the back foot, and then with the strike he has, he's a real threat. And what really is helping him is Fernandes turning up in different positions, or Martial going in behind Rashford, pinning people back, and he's out to find a little pocket. And United have a few false dawns with people like Welbeck over the years, with Rashford to a point, and they need to protect this guy. And he's still only young, and but he looks like a star in the making, and he looks like, you know, he may have saved them somewhere between 75 to 100 million, and they may not buy Sancho's now. They may decide to use that money and go elsewhere.
That's interesting what you talk about, is off the ball movement. Like, as a coach, how do you coach that to a player? Because if it's something on the ball, technically you can just spend a lot of time on the training ground. Like, that seems like something that's more natural, that it's intelligence of a player. Like, how do you actually coach them to move?
Well, I suppose how you coach it is, it's not just about his movement, it's about people around him creating space, and that's the point. When you look at the average touches of a team, or you look where they've touched the ball, you'll find that Manchester United front three of Martial and Rashford will touch the ball on right wing, left wing, centre forward, and at times even tonight Fernandes stood in the centre forward position. So that means then the Villa back four have to react off that, and it creates a little bit of space for him to come into. So it is a combination of the team around him, and you see that further back in Manchester United. Matic looked finished 3-4 months ago. He looked like he was done. He's now starting to look like the player that was at Chelsea to a point, because of Fernandes and Pogba ahead of him engaging in midfield, and it's created a bit of space around him. So it's not necessarily his movements, it's about him understanding when the players around him create that bit of space, he comes in and takes it.
It's incredible how this has turned around since January for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, that they now, being a point behind Leicester, are probably favourites to finish in the top 4, and with such devastating attacking force, can dream at least now of being back in contention for a Premier League title, if not next season, over the next couple of seasons. Is it all down to Bruno Fernandes? Is it that one signing that's changed everything?
Yeah, it is, and one player can change so much, and it builds so much confidence in the team. And we've seen it with Liverpool. The signing of Van Dijk meant that Matip, Gomez and even Lovren to a certain extent have looked good centre halves, and that's what one signing can do. They can transform a team. But United need more than that. They need to be better. There's questions to be asked. Is their goalkeeper still one of the best in the world? Are the fullbacks, which is how most teams attack now, are they at the highest level? Is Lindelof what we think he is? He's been up and down, and maybe the likes of that back four aren't being questioned from a defensive point of view because they're gone so strong forward-wise. But you would still say in a top game that back four have to give them more of a platform and be better at keeping clean sheets. But at the moment they look really strong, and they look like they're about to become a real force.
That first half an hour seems like it was long since forgotten by the time the end of the game came around, because we spent a good length of the game slaughtering Villa. And worst of all, I guess, for Villa supporters, talking about their attitude and their work rate and their real want to survive. Like, that's got to be a huge worry for Dean Smith. That last goal that Paul Pogba scored, where Like Paul Pogba, one of the most talented players in the league, has all the time in the world at the edge of the area from a corner kick, and they're sort of half-heartedly getting out and turning their backs when he's getting the shot in. Like, that's not a team who's putting their lives on the line to keep their team in the Premier League.
No, there's no doubt that Villa's the DNA that got them promoted. That you know, to get out of the Championship in England, you've got to have something about you. You've got to have. You play close to 48 games. You've got to be able to dig in at certain stages. They spent 140 odd million on players, and they haven't brought in people with a little bit of get go and get after the ball. And when things go against you, that's them players really, they're the ones that hurt you. Like, but when you look at McGinn in midfield, like there's something gone wrong there. The lockdown hasn't been good for him. He's come back and he can't move across the pitch, and I think particularly looking with Irish eyes how Conor Hurahan isn't in that team and giving them huge energy, and actually him and Jack Grealish have a good combination and they seem to play well together. But I would also question, as much as I think he's a top player, if your captain has behaved the way Jack Grealish behaved in the COVID lockdown, and he showed glimpses of quality at different stages, but there was a real lack of hunger from him as well, and that is a concern. If your club captain is going around like that, that is a concern. Because
we heard from John Giles earlier that he feels that actually Grealish is very much capable to go to a top 4, top 6 team, and that his skill set, because he's so far above everything else at Aston Villa, would suit playing a quicker style of football where, you know, 1-2 touches and brings a load of other players into the game. But is there a question over his attitude? When you look at that performance, like, to be the club captain, the local boy, and to just be sort of floating around the place.
Yeah, look, it's difficult for him because he hasn't got a lot around him, and I think John Giles is 100% spot on in terms of when Jack's on the ball, he attracts 2-3 players to him, and if he had better players around him, he can lay it off to them, and obviously then people are more worried about the other players, so create more space for him, much in the way Fernandes does for. But Jack Grealish is not getting into this Manchester United team at the moment for me. He's a bit to do, but they may still sign him and see can they turn him into the next level. But he's not getting into that Manchester United team for me at the moment. He's definitely not getting into the Liverpool team because of his lack of work rate, and he's nowhere near that midfield trio that Man City have. So where does he go? There is question mark. What the next move for Jack is huge, but there's a real star there. But he needs better players around him, and I suppose, to be fair to him, unless he goes to a club like that, we're not going to really find out.
Yeah, Villa are in dire straits. They're 4 points from safety. Haven't won a game since the beginning of February. Scored 2 in their last 8 now. We're going to cover their game against Crystal Palace on Sunday. Do you give them any hope of staying up?
No, I don't. I don't at the moment. I think they've got to do something different. Dean Smith's a really difficult job. He's got to look at his shape. He's also got to look at does he sacrifice someone like Grealish and play him even as a lone striker and try and do something different and flood midfield and have a bit more energy in there. He's got to look at that. But they just look like the confidence is on the floor there in the club, and Villa don't have an identity. They don't have, like, if a long ball team was struggling at the moment, or a team who are really strong in set pieces, you'd say stay in the game, keep a clean sheet. Every corner we get, we send all our forwards up. It's not a way of playing that I would like, but they don't even have that to go to. It's neat and tidy stuff, and they're in real trouble, and I'm not sure the way out for them.
Looking at your own personal situation, you're back tomorrow, finally, a game of football. You've got a friendly against Derry. At long last, says you. Yeah,
no, it's amazing. I mean, we've done what coaches call the -1 training session today, where you work on your corners, your set piece, your throw-ins, and it was amazing. It was a great feeling. We played 11v11 against each other last week, and it was pretty good. With Sean Gannon against Michael Duffy. Gannon on an overlap and Duffy stopping the cross, and Duffy taking on Gannon, and for us that was huge. That's great to have that quality in the training ground, but nothing beats going against opposition. To be fair to Derry, we feel that it's a chance to improve both clubs and good match practice ahead of European football. it's not something normally happens where you play a team in your own league in a pre-season friendly. But I think it's just shows the sort of working together ahead of 4 or 5 weeks' time. We're both in European football.
Yeah, I know you're going to be streaming the game as well. I'm just thinking, would you not just play Shamrock Rovers at some stage over the next couple of weeks and stream it for everybody, and a little, I don't know, some sort of a prize on offer, some sort of a grudge match, get everybody back involved?
Yeah, look, I'm sure we'll clash with them in time, so that will happen, don't worry. You keep people wanting more, and eventually that will happen. But there's no doubt there's real rivalry in our league now, and the standard has gone up, and we've got to manage these next couple of weeks. It is disappointing that effectively League of Ireland has taken 3.5 month off season. We played 5 games. We'll come back after 5 months. We play 13 games and take another 3.5 months off. That's disappointing, and we're not happy about that. But look, once we're back playing live football, we've got to capture the imagination of the public as best we can. There'll be no Premiership on, and we've got to do a good job and put a good show on.
And you discovered today as well the European situation was pretty much confirmed, so they're going to be one-legged games. You're seeded for the first match, so there's a possibility it'll be one leg at home. Is that an advantage to Dundalk over one leg, or does it concern you, or what's your general thoughts?
I suppose it depends. We're hearing there'll be no fans in any of the European games in Ireland, so we've had some big clubs come to Ireland for many years and really struggle and be a different side when you go away to them. So you need to look at the draw. If you draw anybody at home, you will have a chance. But at the same time, because we're seeded, there's teams who would say if they draw home to Dundalk, it's an opportunity for them to get to the second round of Champions League. So ultimately we're relying on a little bit of lady luck to go away in the draw. We are seeded. That is the advantage of the hard work we've done in the club over the last 8 years. It gives us a chance at least to be in the second round of the Champions League and go deep into the competition. Yeah,
and you touched on it tonight during commentary a couple of times, that it's been noticeable since the Premier League has returned that the technically better teams are the teams that win the games, that the emotion has been taken out of it. We saw tonight, as you say, the whole end in that first half an hour would have been so behind Aston Villa and getting them forward, and that wasn't there, and Manchester United's superiority just shines through. Like, Dundalk are a very good technical side that actually you don't really need the emotion. You'd love to have a packed Oriel Park or be down in Tala and have a huge crowd there for a big Champions League game, but actually just playing a team 11 on 11, technically you probably fancy yourselves against a lot of quality sides.
Yeah, well, I think, to be fair to Dundalk, Rovers, a lot of teams now are willing to keep the ball in Irish football, so it's given us a real chance in European football. Since we've gone to summer football, there's no doubt technically the standard has improved. Fitness levels have improved in the league, and since we've gone to summer football, we've had 2 teams qualify group stage at Europa League, and we have a lot of people knocking on the doors. But ultimately, the standard in Europe has gone so high. You know, 20 years ago, drawing a team from Slovakia was normally a good chance to progress. Now you're playing against full-time leagues of really high standards. So Europe has become so competitive. We played Riga last year, and we tried to sign 1 or 2 players who ended up at Riga on absolutely astronomical money. So there's people all over Europe chasing the same dream as we are. We just need a little bit of luck, but there's no doubt Irish players now are technically good enough to hold their own. I think we can improve on that this year. That's what we've been working on the training ground. But technically we've got players able to keep the ball in Europe, and yeah, you're right, you need to do that to give yourself the best chance.
Best of luck with it. We'll talk to you over the next few weeks.
Thank you.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The Sunday Paper Review on Off the Ball.
When he wants to do something, he does it. A hugely impressive person, apart from being obviously a brilliant golfer.
My cousins disliked their dog so intensely that they renamed it Scalacci.
Yeah.
And the dog was called Scalacci from then on.
It's a great piece of journalism, and that sums up what he's like. The intro to this is just brilliant. He is an absolute control freak.
Digesting the best stories on the back pages every Sunday afternoon on Off the Ball.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
You're welcome back. It is 8 o'clock. Eoin and Adrian with you for the next 2 hours here on OTB AM. Interesting stuff from Vinnie Perth there, Adrian, especially that point at the end about emotion and the sort of sucking of that out of the game as a result of having no fans around. The idea that technical teams are kind of going to a whole new level. There's kind of truth in that. I think I certainly see it when it comes to younger players. I think that those who perhaps feel the pressure of playing in front of a big home stadium don't have that pressure anymore. Like, they know in the back of their minds that there are millions of people watching and bigger television audiences than ever. But it's just a whole different situation altogether, not having people live in the stadium, in the flesh, watching you.
Yeah, it's very difficult, isn't it, for us to, like, there's definitely a part of me that has always assumed that a lot of the stuff about, the fans are the 12th man or the 16th man or whatever way you want to look at it, that, like, some of that, and it is, like, some of that is guff, right? Like, it's the players kind of speaking to the fans in a way that they expect that those fans want to be spoken to, as opposed to being grounded in reality. So it is kind of interesting then to see when you pull all of that out of a stadium, like the impact that it has. It's like a weird, don't know what the plans for, like, obviously it would be some to talk about streaming some of the games. I mean, the League of Ireland games, I'm not sure. You get a weird picture of, like, even watching the football last night, with the crowd noise in a way that the players obviously don't. But I presume you just get used to it after a while, do you? Like, is it 2 or 3 games in, you're like, that's just the way it is? And, like, because some of the initial chat, like, it's almost disappeared now entirely. Do you remember the first few games that happened where it was like post-match interviews? It was always like, Jesus, how weird was that? It's almost been removed now entirely as even a talking point.
It's a good point, and it's even weird, or sorry, not weird, it's less weird now as an audience, isn't it? That we're not even talking about the fact that the crowd noises are fake and all of that. We've just become conditioned to it. It's interesting what he's saying about his own return as well, getting back, training session -1, I think he called it yesterday. Like the League of Ireland, like we'll get into this later on in the London Times and their story about crowds coming back into games. The League of Ireland surely has the potential to do this, to actually not, I guess, alienate a whole swathe of their supporters by going in with socially distanced crowds. Like, I mean, it's going to be a big challenge for an organisation like the GAA, who may have to annoy a lot of people outside of, say, season ticket holders, to actually have a socially distant Croke Park, whereas with League of Ireland and smaller crowds, they may actually be able to pull this thing off, and it may actually be a good first case for Irish sporting society to proceed with reintroducing crowds.
Are you saying that the League of Ireland has had socially distanced crowds for years anyway?
In some places, I maybe suggesting that. But, like, I mean, how do you control the ultras and all that sort of thing? I mean, they can socially distance, I guess. But no, I don't know. I think they mention women's sport when it comes to sport in the UK as a potential first case in the UK because of smaller crowds, and it makes sense. And here in Ireland, I think the League of Ireland could be a possibility for that.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, I don't know. There hasn't been very much talk here. Like, it's kind of weird, isn't it, that the UK, when you consider everything that's still going on over there and where on the curve that they are in relation to coronavirus, it's like, I don't know, Jesus, in some ways, like, we are very detached from it here because things over the last while have been very settled here. I mean, in the context of being totally upside down. But, like, in the UK, the cases are, like, several, and the thing is fairly rampant, and yet they're still having, like, full-on conversations about getting people back into grounds, like, in a way that you would think that the curve was really diminishing. So I don't know, it's sort of weird, but, like, we've always sort of let other countries be kind of a guinea pig for us, haven't we, over the course of this, which is great. I'm all for it. Long may it continue.
Yeah, without question. So we'll get into that a little bit later on. We've got papers coming up. The FAI is going to be covered in that in quite incredible detail, actually, that story trundles on, and the infighting and the political nature of it's covered very well in the Irish Daily Mail, amongst other newspapers this morning. We're going to have Phil Egan in just a moment doing Monday's headlines today. Andy Mitten will be chatting to us about Manchester United later on. Like, this idea, Adrian, of Manchester United going out and having a big summer, like, this is a very interesting time to be having this conversation, because all of a sudden it looks like Manchester United are very well set. But I do wonder if the cautious optimism that is around the club at the moment, because that's what it is. Even if you like look at the vast majority of Manchester United fans talking about the club at the moment, there is a huge degree of caution about it at the moment. I wonder if the caution is actually down to the fact that when Solskjaer came in, they were on the crest of a wave for a fairly prolonged period of time. He was given that contract, they had the Paris Saint-Germain winning the Champions League, and then things fell to pieces a little bit, right away up until the start of this calendar year, really. And I wonder if that's actually informing them that actually we should be cautious. Actually, we should be investing something in the summer this year. The team we've got at the moment, it's unchanged for whatever, the last 3 or 4 games. It's excellent, and there's some great hope there, and everybody's on the upward trajectory when it comes to the age profile. But still, let us perhaps take ourselves back to 6 months ago when we weren't within an arse's roar of actually coming within Liverpool.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the caution, actually. It's an interesting point. Like, it'll be very cautious from within, as it always is. But I wonder after that. Like, actually, do you know what? There's been so much conversation about Liverpool needing a midfielder. Could they bring in somebody like Alcantara or somebody that would be a bit more dynamic for that midfield in a way that actually, when you look at that United team, where is it that they need strengthening? Like, you might suggest Luke Shaw maybe might be under a bit of threat. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, even Shaw has started. I think has he started something stupid like 18 or 19 consecutive games, something like that. Like maybe they need a new goalkeeper is a conversation that we might have at some point. But yeah, maybe centre back. But like what I'm saying is there actually aren't that many when you consider the players that were there. And like you were saying earlier on, all these new signings in giant inverted commas that have suddenly found their way into the team. And you look at even Fred coming off the bench last night. Like it wasn't that long ago we were talking about Fred being the greatest thing at Manchester United. So like there is also strength in depth there as well when you look at some of the players. And you look at Martial last night on the the 9 out of 10 last night, and he comes off the pitch having yearned for the goal that he couldn't get, and throws a strap last night. So there's plenty of, I don't know, there's a good case for the optimism.
Without question. Phil Egan, how are you?
Good, yeah. United are going to win the league next season. Is that what we're saying?
It must feel.
Phil's very optimistic about United, I think.
It's a fairly spectacular time to be a Manchester United fan, even if you take yesterday and Michael Cousin, looking at Jose Mourinho and that Tottenham Hotspur team, and looking at how Solskjaer has got this United team playing.
Yeah, absolutely. It wouldn't have been lost on the United fans watching the Spurs game beforehand. Pedestrian, ball going sideways, just no spark, no creative spark, and certainly not down to a lack of creative players, but that's just the way Jose Mourinho is at the moment, and looks like yesterday's man. And then you think of when Solskjaer took over, you know, when he did replace Mourinho, obviously things weren't good. So Solskjaer coming in, obviously naturally just lifted the place. They went on that great run. They had that great win in Paris against PSG, but then they finished last season quite badly. Indifferent start of the season. You think back to January, they lose to Liverpool, then they lose to Burnley, and you know there's a lot of questions about Solskjaer. But then Bruno Fernandes is signed, and they haven't really looked back since. Unbeaten in 17 games in all competitions. A lot of people are saying, "Oh, look who they're beating." But okay, they beat Villa last night. They drew at Villa earlier in the season. They beat Bournemouth at the weekend. They somehow lost to them earlier in the season. You know, these are teams that they beat Sheffield United comfortably since the restart. That's a team they drew with earlier in the season. So these are games that they struggled with earlier on in the campaign, but now they're making them very comfortable. And Bruno Fernandes obviously takes a lot of credit for that. Now you've got Paul Pogba, who was very effective last night, just kept the head down and did what he's meant to do. And now there's talk of him signing a new contract. Obviously Mason Greenwood just looks sensational. The only thing is they're obviously on this incredible run. It's going to end at some stage. It's how they react. What happens when they lose a game? You know, will it? You know, obviously winning games breeds confidence. What will happen when they lose one? But it looks like if you look at their fixtures, that Leicester game on the final day, it could be wrapped up before then.
Let's go back to Spurs just for a moment, Phil. Like, where does this get better for Jose Mourinho? If you are a sympathiser for the man, where is this going to take a turn? Because he's had his pre-season, he's had his few months to actually get stuck into the team, to actually really put his stamp on the set of players that he's been given. So that's half of it. The next thing then is going to be the transfer market. But there isn't any empirical evidence to suggest that Tottenham Hotspur are going to go out and spend big in the transfer market. The only way they do that is if they get a shed load of money for Harry Kane, or if they jump ship on Tanguy and Ndombele really soon. And I'm not sure if that's something that Tottenham are going to be prepared to do. I think Jose Mourinho's got a fairly bad track record of letting outstanding players slip through the cracks and not getting the most out of them. My hunch is that Ndombele will become that next player that Jose couldn't get the best out of and becomes a world-class talent with Paris Saint-Germain or wherever he goes. it just seems that they're kind of screwed, to be honest with you, and that Jose Mourinho, if you're looking at him from the hierarchy at Tottenham, it's hard to trust him fully.
I think if you're a Spurs fan, I don't even know what you can look forward to, because obviously fans that aren't Spurs fans and they might like Jose Mourinho, they might think he's a bit dated. Probably one thing you can look forward to is that Amazon Prime documentary that's coming out, because that looks like it could be juicy enough, some of the things that have happened since he's taken over. But, you know, you think back to when he took over, Pochettino was already struggling. You know, the form in 2019 wasn't good. They obviously got to a Champions League final, which papered over a lot of cracks, but they were losing a lot of games last season, towards the end of last season. But you look at the team that they put out yesterday, and there are some very talented attacking players, energetic players, that a coach that would have an attacking philosophy would get a better tune out of them. And Mourinho, that is not something he's able to do. His teams have always been based on being solid at the back, having really good individuals that will win games for you, but the base is always there with being solid at the back. And you think back to the first game since the restart, they got that goal ahead against United, but you just felt that you couldn't trust them to see it out 1-0. And that's pretty much where Spurs are. In terms of optimism, you mentioned Harry Kane there. Who's going to take Harry Kane? Because they're going to have to pay huge money for him. And where does he fit in? If you would ask me maybe 6 months ago, I said, do you know what? Harry Kane could be an option for Manchester United. But now I think the emergence of Mason Greenwood, they would think, would there be the necessity to splash out huge money on someone like Harry Kane when you've got Mason Greenwood, who in turn, his emergence has also given Anthony Martial a bit of a kick up the backside as well.
Well, is that the comparison not between Martial and Kane rather than Greenwood and Kane? The comparison I would have thought is between Greenwood and Sancho at this point. And like,
no, I think
so.
No, I think Greenwood is so talented he can play anywhere in that front three.
You think he could lead the line?
Absolutely. Obviously, he's only 18, so it's a lot of pressure, and it's not a bad thing that he's playing out wide. But I don't think necessarily if United should just forget about Jadon Sancho. If they can get him, go and get him, because he's going to improve the team. He's going to improve the squad, because, you know, at the moment, we saw just before the lockdown, United had a few injuries and, you know, they weren't as fluent as they are now. But it's all about building a squad, and especially if this rule comes in where you can use 5 substitutes next season as well, that if you can empty the bench with more attacking talent, then you're going to be at a huge advantage compared to other teams around you.
Got a comment in here from Matt asking you, Phil, do you think Martial will outscore Timo Werner next season?
Oof. I don't. Yeah, that's a good one, because I'm not sure where Chelsea are going to play Werner. Obviously, haven't been convinced by Tammy Abraham this season. Giroud has come in and he's done okay. So does that suggest that Timo Werner is going to come in as their front main man, or are they going to play him out as a wide left player? But it looks like Christian Pulisic is going to play in that position. So if you're putting Timo Werner in a central role, then I'd imagine he's going to score. I'd be surprised if he didn't score 20 league goals next season. So I would be leaning towards Werner at the moment.
Let's get into Monday's headlines today. Phil, this is where you become a pun master, and it's where you gaze into your crystal ball and tell us what is going to happen. Our first headline today is "We are better than you," are with no E at the end. I'm not sure, like, you've taken a bit of artistic license there, Phil. I kind of like it. Arsenal to edge it against Spurs is the sub-headline. Talk us through this headline.
Yeah, this can work in terms of can be Arteta or it can be Arsenal. Now, I suppose if I have to explain it, maybe it's not great.
I would have thought "we are better than you," Phil, would have been a far better.
Yeah, but you know, this is a family show, right? You know,
fair point.
Are we allowed to say that? Well, you've clearly said it now, so I mean, there's a free pass there. But I think that, do you know what? I think Arsenal, there's a lot more optimism if you're an Arsenal fan, because you have that younger, progressive coach who has a plan, and Mourinho might well get a result against Arsenal at the weekend, whether it's a 1-1 draw, which would be the safe option. But coming out of that game, I think you'd still have more optimism if you're an Arsenal fan. Obviously, they started the restart very shakily. David Luiz, the little cameo against Man City. But since then, he's gone 3 at the back. Granit Xhaka has obviously come back in as well after going off in that game against City with an injury. And there's plenty to be optimistic about, because Arsenal have young players and they have a plan. They have a manager who knows what he wants to do. Whereas you look at Tottenham and we don't really know what they're about. Whereas under Pochettino, you knew that they were trying to press and they were trying to play a high line, which I still think they have the players to do that, but they just don't have the coach that can implement that.
Yeah, I can easily see what you just suggested there happening, that Jose Mourinho snatches this, or it's a 1-1 draw and they have a chance to win the game or whatever, and then Jose Mourinho will come out and he will say that's the conversation over, I am a better manager than Mikel Arteta, and this sort of short-termism will be shown up. I can easily see that happen on Sunday. We are better than you. That is headline 1. Headline 2 here is pretty self-explanatory. Canaries top flight cut short. Very good.
I think this is going to be the weekend Norwich get relegated. And I think we all picked Norwich to get relegated at the start of the season. It's no surprise. I suppose what is a surprise is some of the results they had. If you think back to earlier in the season, the fact that they beat Manchester City, they've obviously beaten Leicester as well this season. And, they had a decent cup run as well. They knocked Spurs out and they pushed United all the way in extra time. But the plan, I think, for Norwich was get up. Obviously, don't invest heavily in the squad. Basically, don't put yourself in financial trouble, and then go back down, and maybe when they come back up they'll be a bit stronger. I don't know if that will be the case now. I don't know how COVID-19 has affected that plan for them, because we saw with Burnley are the example where under Sean Dyche they came up, didn't really invest that heavily, went down to the Championship. They had money then, they signed Andre Gray, they got back up the next season, and they've been a Premier League club ever since. So was that what Norwich were trying to do? I don't know if COVID-19 has maybe affected that, and will they have to get rid of a few more players than they wanted?
It seems like a fairly sensible plan, that if you can coexist between the Championship and the Premier League every couple of seasons, you should do it. The danger is if you start plummeting completely. But is that always due to overspending, or can it happen when you try to tread that line as well?
Well, you look at the teams that came up. So Sheffield United, apart from the odd player that they got, they didn't really change much from last season. Aston Villa completely changed. We talked about Villa at the start of the season. Were they doing a Fulham? And it turns out they were. They signed loads of players, and it pretty much looks like they're going to go down. There's nothing to suggest, watching Villa last night with 4 games to play, that they can turn this around.
Yeah. Last headline, Chelsea find it tough to cut through the blades. So Chelsea going to get beaten, or is it going to be a draw?
I think it could be a frustrating one. I watched the Sheffield United Wolves game, 2 very well coached teams, and obviously John Egan comes up with the late goal. But I think Jack O'Connell back is a big plus for Sheffield United. They're just so well drilled, so well organised, that they have a bit of their confidence back. They obviously had a sluggish start to the restart. Now we don't know if that goal against Villa had counted, the one that they had incorrectly ruled out, would things have been different. But I think just the Spurs win seems to have reignited them, and they were very hard to break down for Wolves. And I thought they did a really good job on Adama Traore. So I'd imagine what they're going to do against Chelsea is basically sit in, that 3 becomes a 5, and then when they get a chance to attack, Chelsea do leave spaces at the back. So, it's going to be a tight one. And, Chelsea need to get this win. If you look at their fixtures, they've obviously got a trip to Anfield to come, and they also have Wolves on the final day of the season. So they really need to get this done, because you wouldn't be too confident they're going to go to Anfield and win. Maybe they could get a draw, but they need to get the points. Obviously, Sheffield United still have the chance of European football. So that's definitely one of the standout games of the weekend in terms of the effect it'll have on the top 4 race and the European spots as well.
Phil, just before we let you off, your other specialist topic, obviously boxing, the big fight confirmed in the last 24 hours. Katie Taylor and Delphine Pursoon going at it again. All the titles back on the line. It's part of this fight club, I think, on Eddie Hearn's estate in Essex, by all accounts, next month. Yeah. So she's not. Katie Taylor is. I mean, if ever it was, it can never be put against her that she hasn't risked everything. She's very much doing that here. The last one was obviously so tight.
Yeah, I mean, from Madison Square Garden to Eddie Hearn's garden, it's going to be a great fight. And I think Katie Taylor, when she went pro, the message was she wants to fight the best, she wants to be the best, she wants to fight the best. And it was a great fight first time. And at the end, Katie was hanging on because she got into a war with Delphine Pursoon. When I see Katie Taylor fight the way she did against Linda Datu, where she just obviously was fighting somebody that was bigger than her, but she just fought on the outside, got in and out with her flurries. that's what I want to see. She's a better boxer than Delphine Pursoon. Now, I'm wondering, she's obviously been training a lot, and we know she's a dedicated trainer. I hope she hasn't overtrained if that's possible, because she would have had her sights on that Amanda Serrano fight. Now, because she's fought Pursoon, it's not as if she's going to have to do much homework on her, but I definitely would like to see a change in how she approaches the fight. See, unfortunately for Katie Taylor is when she gets into these fights, she can outbox any of them. No, there's no doubt about it. But sometimes she gets dragged into these wars, and that is the concern, because Pursoon is bigger, she's strong, and look, we don't know what would have happened if there was a few seconds or a few minutes left in the first fight in June of last year. But it's certainly, the indication was Pursoon was pushing and Katie Taylor was hanging on a little bit. So Katie Taylor will be looking to put that right when they meet. And yeah, I can't wait for it. I think out of all the fights that have been announced since the lockdown, this is definitely the best one.
What's the setup in the garden going to be like?
I'd imagine it's, I don't know what they're going to do in terms of crowd noise, because are we going to have something similar to what we see with amateur boxing, where you can hear absolutely everything?
Well,
sorry,
I thought you were making I thought that was a point in jest, because we wouldn't ordinarily be conditioned to thinking about big crowds in a back garden. But what you're saying is actually it should cover up the reality of it. But like if you watch the UFC, I mean, it's actually a far more visceral sport, and it's like way more. It taps way more into your senses with no crowd noises whatsoever. I would say that they should just totally leave it dry and no crowd noises at all.
Yeah, well, one thing, if you want to see how the best are the best, and you want to see what kind of direction they get from their corners, that's one thing that we get to see now. You get to hear absolutely everything, and that's fascinating. And that, I suppose, watching the Taylor Pursoon rematch, we'll see exactly what the instruction is from Ross MMA. And obviously he has a message that he sends Katie Taylor out to do, but sometimes it doesn't go according to plan. And I always judge the best coaches on when things are starting to go a little bit awry, what they can do to tweak things. And that's where they earn their money. Just sometimes it can be a small little thing. Maybe a fighter loses a little bit of focus after a few rounds where they think this is quite comfortable, then they just fall into that comfort zone, and then it's up to the trainer to get them out of it. And that's one thing that we're going to see a lot of.
Phil, good stuff. Enjoy the weekend's football.
Cheers.
Right. You'll have seen over the last few weeks that Team OTB have been training with BMW and Triathlon Ireland to get ready for the Run and Ride for Pieta, which is a cycle and run challenge that is supported in Pieta House and is proudly supported by BMW Ireland. Now, next Friday, the 17th of July, we're going to be bringing you live coverage of the duathlon on OTB AM. Live sport has begun to come back, but nothing will be like the live sport that we're bringing you this day next week. So we've got a brilliant prize to give away this morning, with thanks to BMW and Triathlon Ireland. This morning you can win a voucher for Mondello Park, which includes the full BMW driving experience day at Mondello. It's a brilliant prize. You'll get a safety briefing, 3 introductory laps in a Mini Cooper S with a professional instructor alongside you. You'll get 4 laps driving a BMW M8 competition with your instructor alongside. Debrief as well. You'll get a debrief and a presentation of your completion certificate. Well, the completion certificate is big, but getting to drive around Mondello is even better. So to enter, it's a fantastic prize. All you got to do is retweet or share OTB AM this morning. Bonus points for sharing a screenshot of you listening or watching the show through the OTB Sports app. Right, let's tell you what's coming up this morning on OTB AM. It is 24 minutes past 8 at the moment, and we'll be getting into the sports pages any second now. After that, then, we're going to be chatting to Andy Mitten about Manchester United last night and what the future holds. Exciting times at Old Trafford. Caoimhe O'Neill, then, is a journalist with the Liverpool Echo. She'll be telling us what it's like to be living in a city where they've had one of the greatest sporting triumphs the city has seen in recent times, but during the current COVID-19 times. So we'll be getting her take on what the last few weeks have been like. And Roscommon's Mt Rushmore with Sheahan, Curran and John Caulfield. That is coming your way at 20 past 9 this morning. Time for the sports pages.
OTB AM.
OTBsports.com leads with John Giles on John Joe Shelby. It was the best display I've seen from a midfielder this season. He's a big fan of Shelby. You've also got Sour Jose Mourinho taking aim at Conservative Bournemouth and VAR. You've got Padraig Harrington talking about Bryson DeChambeau. It is going to change golf, he says. And you can also watch Tottenham slumping to a goalless snooze fest at Bournemouth. That is otbsports.com this morning.
The Irish Independent for you this morning is absolutely jam-packed, full of stuff today, which is great. Colin Keys with the story that I hadn't seen elsewhere. Two Cork teams suspend activity after potential COVID contact. 2 players from West Cork clubs were in contact, it seems, with someone tested positive. So all activity, Colin Keys writes, is suspended there now at those clubs until those players are tested and the results are returned. Both teams, it seems, were also involved with games against in challenge matches. So those teams as well have taken what are described here as precautionary measures until the picture is a bit clearer. And I'm not really that sure either what those precautionary measures are or what the best advice is if you are a team that's played against somebody who's, I guess, a team who is somebody who is then getting tested for coronavirus. What exactly is the recommendation about how you should behave or contact people, etc., etc., etc. So that may end up being a bit of a test case for all of this, but that is the latest developments in that one, and we shall see how it pans out, because it might have major implications, obviously, for stuff that's coming down the line in relation to both the club game that's due to get underway any week now, and also then the inter-county stuff to follow a bit later in the year. So it's the latest wrinkle. I don't know if a saga is quite the way to put it, but certainly the latest wrinkle in that story. Rory O'Connor writes about a bumper window of international rugby upcoming from October 24th to December the 5th. Ireland will close out the remaining couple of Six Nations matches, Italy and France games, as part of a 7-week run of games, which is going to include an 8-team mini tournament, he writes, with the Six Nations teams as well as Fiji and Japan. Which I'm sort of scratching my head as to why the hell they bother doing that. Like, they'll have literally just finished the Six Nations, and then they're going to rerun off another version of it that might be, I don't know, is it a test case for actually including both of those countries going forward? Odd timing, I think. But look, we'll see. And I'm not really going to complain about a 7-week bumper run of international rugby, to be honest. So we'll see how that goes. And also the Heineken Cup has made the sensible decision, I think, to decide that the final for the tournament this year, the location for the final this year will only be decided once the finalists are known. So it means effectively that Marseille is now out of the running. That'll be back for 2021. And whoever the 2 teams in the final are, they'll do some sort of a jiggery-pokery to decide that it will end up in, I'm assuming, one of those teams' cities. James Corrigan writes about Tigers' return from Memorial next week. It's his first tour appearance for 5 months, and the main shot there of Leeds on the march. Promotion weighed almost over, 5-0 win over Stoke last night. They're 6 points clear of third place and only 4 games to go.
The Irish Examiner this morning leads with match report from Old Trafford last night, or from Villa Park, I should say. Aston Villa 0, United 3, Champions League spot within sight for United. An interesting one here as well. Ryan injured foot training with club, not Wexford. So Liam Ryan's club have had to come out and say that he got injured with his club while not training with the county, because there were naturally rumours abounding when he got injured, and people have been saying.
Well, his manager came out and sort of half hinted, didn't he? He sort of half said that he used the word trip with the county, trip, without fully finishing that. Wasn't that it?
Yeah, well, the club chairman, Michael Doyle, has he's come out today, so that's the latest quote that the Irish Examiner have said. Liam was training below in the club. I was speaking to the lads involved with the team last Monday night, and they said as soon as he went down, they knew something was serious, because Liam wouldn't lie down too easily. But he stayed down, made no attempt to get back up, and they knew it was serious, and it turned out he had a broken bone in the foot. So you had Padge Walsh is the interview that you're referring to. He's addressed that here as well. I didn't see the interview that Skinner did, that's his nickname, but he obviously made a remark that was in the heat of the moment. The fact is Liam was injured in training for Rapparees, getting ready for the Shells match. That's where it started, and that's where it finished. Our biggest worry is that he'll miss the first couple of games. Hopefully, we might have him back later, and we are able to get through those games.
It's an awful time to have a misspeak, isn't it? Like,
doing something with the county team or something was the line he said.
The lads played it on the news round last night, and he said "tre" and then stopped and said doing something with the county team. So, like, I don't know why you would say that if you had literally seen the guy in your own training session. It's bizarre.
In fairness, the Wexford County Board have come out to dismiss that, and now the club chairman has come out to dismiss that. So that's what they've said about the issue and the injury to Liam Ryan. But it's an interesting one. Probably not going to be the last of these sort of stories we see over the next few weeks. The other couple of things in the Examiner then are just match reports from last night. Michael O'Neill in awe as Leeds take giant step, and Mourinho fuming as sorry Spurs denied penalty.
The Times of London, the Irish edition here, Martin Ziegler and Martin Hardy writing that fans are coming back to football in the UK. The aim is that grounds there are going to be between 30 and 50% full, and they're going to get back in for the start of the new season, which looks like it'll be the middle of September. And it looks like a plan indeed actually for all sport, and a plan that the government are very much behind. As long as social distancing can be allowed, masks must be worn. I'm absolutely certain there'll be other facets to that. There'll be other recommendations. It's been long spoken about having temperature testing at grounds as well, which is a very easy thing to do. You see it at sort of most mass gatherings. It is obviously something that the GAA have decided, as they say, on medical advice, is not an area they want to go on, but most other sporting organisations and outside of sport as well do seem to be headed that way. So, but anyway, sport is coming back 30-50% start of the season. We'll see how that pans out. That's in the UK, of course. Paul Joyce writes about Jordan Henderson's long injury layoff. Klopp saying that he could miss the start of the season. So I don't know, does that cement his position as player of the year now that he doesn't get to disprove it before the end of the season? And Elizabeth Amon tells the story of the West Indies turning the screw on England in the first test of their series. Jason Holder taking 6 for 42, best numbers of his career, and the Windies are flying.
The Irish Times this morning leads with Pogba goal caps another win for Solskjaer's rampant United. VAR in the spotlight again as Spurs held at Bournemouth. Clinical Leeds stay on track for automatic promotion, and Emmett Malone is writing about Darragh O'Shea, West Brom's star defender, proving his worth at West Brom.
The Star, meanwhile, this morning, the Irish Daily Star, Paul Lennon takes on that main story there in relation to the FAI and the League of Ireland, who were due to implement a series of changes to its rules at an upcoming EGM and AGM, all of which would see the government pay out another 19 million quid in that rescue package, the remainder of it. And the new Minister for Sport has had to write to the FAI top brass to tell them to get a move on, make the changes, get the money in. And then another Fianna Fáil TD, Mark McSharry, is alleging that those at the top of the FAI, he says they're aiming to privatise football in Ireland by stealth. So I'm assuming he's alleging that their inaction in relation to all of this is with a view to farming the administration of the league and the ownership of the league out to someone else, is the allegation there. So we'll see what the FAI top brass have to say in response to that. Bernard O'Neill tells us about that Katie Taylor Delphine Pursoon rematch, August 22nd. Pog will stay put at United, writes Martin Dunn, after United's thumping of Villa last night, and Pogba starring a role in that. And Joe is game for a laugh. Paul Keane reports on some comments by Joe Brolly on BBC Northern Ireland, where he says that the GAA's diktat in relation to county bans on training are a joke, genuinely humorous, says Joe Brolly.
The Irish Mirror this morning leads with Green Party. Marvellous Mason scores for third game on the trot. And I don't blame Royals. Shane Lennon has no grudges against Meath, a decade on from the 2010 Leinster final debacle. It's the 10-year anniversary tomorrow.
The Sun, meanwhile, Dean Smith, the Villa manager, fuming after last night's loss to United, as Graham Bryce writes there. Dean Smith was fuming as Bruno Fernandes won a penalty for jumping on Ezer Conra's leg, which I certainly one take of events there. And Jose fuming as well after Kane was denied a penalty. VAR very much at the firing line this morning. And a tease inside of the thoughts of Babs Keating, who says, punish the rebel counties.
Tell on them reads the back of the Irish Daily Mail. This is former Limerick hurling manager Tom Ryan, who says GAA need anonymous tips to enforce rules, and it's privatisation of football in Ireland by stealth. This is comments by Mark McSharry, which we'll come back to in a sec.
The Guardian reports in England against the West Indies, but also a story that I don't see elsewhere from Sean Ingle there. Chris Froome, after 10 years and 7 Grand Tours at Team Sky, who've now become Team Ineos, is leaving. Chris Froome is leaving. He says that he was told that his £5 million contract wasn't going to be renewed, so he signed up for a new team from Israel called Nation. He's 35. He's obviously recovering from what would have appeared to have been a very serious injury last season in a race against time to be fit for the Tour de France next month. Dave Brailsford has indicated to him already he might even make the team Ineos for that Tour de France next month. See how that pans out.
The main story in the Daily Telegraph is of cricket. Stokes' anguish England's new leader comes off second best in Battle of the Captains with Holder. That is the Telegraph.
The Racing Post, big preview of the jumps at Market Raisin and a preview of the big championship games as well.
And the Herald, no excuses, insists Rock. It's a level playing field, says Dub Sharpshooter.
The Irish News, Tyrone not happy that their Ulster opener against Donegal is going to be played at the obviously reduced capacity Ballybuffet. It's a 17,500 capacity. That's down to a couple of thousand, writes Brendan Crossan here, in relation to some quotes from Gavin Devlin, who's Mickey Hart's assistant. And wouldn't they all be better off going to Croke Park, where they can take 21,000 with social distancing?
Let's have a look at the OTB Sports app this morning. We've got our feed there from Jose Mourinho to highlights from Spurs. And you can scroll all the way down to Patrick Harrington's quotes on Bryson DeChambeau, which we'll get back to in just a moment. You've got the radio tab there, as you can see, OTB AM live now, and the video tab, which has all our pundits and all our analysis, and the OTB podcast network as well, all covered inside the OTB Sports app. So just search for that, OTB Sports, just search for that in the App Store or in the Google Play Store. Right, coming back to a couple of the stories, Adrian. Will we start with fans in stadiums?
Yeah.
So this is the back of the London Times. Fans to return for new season, writes Martin Ziegler and Martin Hardy. Premier League clubs aiming to have fans back for the start of next season, with grounds between 30% and 50% full. A couple of little dates and bits of information here as well. The supporters would have to wear face masks. You'd have a situation where the most likely date for the resumption of the Premier League would be September 12th. So they're looking at mid-September as a potential time to actually implement crowds in stadiums, which is interesting if you're projecting all this information and looking at it from an Irish societal point of view. There are a number of concerns, obviously, because of the fact that Cheltenham and that Liverpool versus Atletico match got so much coverage in a very negative way about having big crowds at sporting events, and even the optics of going back with people at sports events may not look great. And some Premier League clubs, which is an interesting detail here, have held talks with companies about providing a medical health passport for supporters. Now, this hasn't been part of the UK government's discussions at all about the return of crowds, but this is something that the Premier League are kind of taking the ball and running with. And then the first step, they say here in the Times, for the return of fans will be pilot events, possibly the Community Shield, or women's events, including England Cricket and Women's Super League. So a lot of this is quite interesting. It seems that sport is going to be leading the way when it comes to bringing big crowds back to UK society, and it's not going to be any different here, you suspect?
Yeah, I think that obviously the Cheltenham and the Liverpool Atletico stuff gets mentioned, but as we would have pointed out ad nauseum at the time, the smarts behind doing stuff like that, we were in such a different position in terms of how informed governments, society, and the experts generally were on all of this stuff. We were obviously still getting to grips with the enormity about what was coming. We're in a very different place now, and it's probably right that they start to have those conversations now. I think that what we're going to see is, you've already mentioned a couple of them there that are coming from the Premier League in relation to a health passport. There will be a lot of kites flown now, I suspect, over the next few weeks as we get to test the theory. I think that it's a lot to do with that. Let's put a date on it. Let's have something to work towards, and let's see how it goes. And if at any point between now and that date in the middle of September that it becomes obvious that actually having fans in the stadium is not the right thing to do, then we already have a template that works without fans, and we'll just keep going with that until such point as it makes sense to have them back in. So I don't know. It's like we mentioned a bit earlier on that. The UK seem to be, despite everything that's going on in the country in relation to the spread of the virus there, it's rampant in a way that it's not here. They are very much gung-ho with pressing ahead with this. And we get to sit back and put our feet up and watch the grim process take place and see exactly what mistakes have been made and see if it works. And then, implement our own process out the back of that.
It does kind of feel that we are looking at things differently in this country. It does feel that perhaps we're looking at sport as if a championship goes ahead this winter is certainly a term I've used myself, that I've used in conversation with my friends, the whole if sporting events happen. It seems in the UK it's if we can actually watch our team live in the flesh. They seem to be one step ahead of us in terms of taking that risk. I don't think we will be having these conversations that they're having in the London Times this morning for another few months at least. The idea of us talking about face masks in Irish sporting events and 30% to 50% capacities, it does seem that we're a step behind on taking that risk. I'm not saying we're a step behind, I'm just saying in terms of actually being willing to put people in the line of danger.
And we've done that as a nation consistently over the last 4 months. I'm right behind it. Like, you know, the former Taoiseach certainly spoke a lot about looking at the performance of other countries in relation to various different measures. And like, I think there's something fairly prudent about that. Like, otherwise it's a bit of a gung-ho, particularly for a country the size of Ireland that won't have the same level of resources due to our numbers as, you know, superpowers like Germany. And like, we watched as the US the world watched as Italy made a lot of mistakes. We watched as the US made mistakes, the UK, and like, then, you know, well, they're not things we should do. And I think the same applies now as we look to sort of get people back to some sort of level of normality with sport. But I'm happy for us to look and see exactly. Funny, the comments I mentioned from the Irish News from Gavin Devlin about that Tyrone-Donegal match. It was the first time I'd seen the notion of fans being at a GAA match at all being mooted. Like, I had assumed we were all working towards November, December and really not having anybody at these games. But he's talking now about let's try and get the game away from Ballybuffet where we could get a bigger crowd in.
It's going to be interesting. Like, it's... I don't know, these things can change quite quickly, I feel, but it definitely feels over the last couple of weeks the mood music has sort of darkened a little bit, and I think everybody here is kind of bracing themselves for what might actually happen with a second wave over the next little while. The second talking point we want to get into, Adrian, is not from the newspapers, it's from Golf Weekly this week actually. Padraig Harrington, he's been chatting about Bryson DeChambeau, and here is what he had to say about his transformation.
Okay, I am going to let you in. This is your inside track here. I'm going to let you. He has you all fooled. So nobody has done this. So I played the Open at Royal Portrush last year. On the range, there's 3 people. There's a young German kid, skinny little lad, skinny tall lad. He looks probably 6'2" or 3, and he's cracking the ball out on a cold day into the wind on the range at 191 ball speed, and he's in rainwear. So everything is against you hitting at speed. So I'm on the range and I'm looking at this and I'm going, well, that's impressive. And between me and him is Bryson DeChambeau standing on the range. And the kid goads Bryson to have a go. I helped him too because I wanted to see Bryson have a go. So on a cold day with his normal driver in heavy gear, Bryson knocked out 189 ball speed. So that's the equivalent of 190, mid 190s. And even if you put in 5.5 degrees loft, it would easily be 195. So Bryson had the speed. He just wasn't using it. So he hasn't gained any speed. He's basically, you're looking, let's Americanize this. You're looking at a guy who was throwing a curveball at 82 mile an hour, who said somebody goaded him to have a go at a fastball, and he threw a fastball at 92. And he's going, okay, that's not so bad. He's worked on it, and now he's at 95 mile an hour. So he's basically had speed. He's played his whole life working on stability of face. Now he's gone for speed. He's always had it. The bulking up, maybe it makes him a bit more stable. But look, I saw it on the range a year ago before all this happened. Right. He always had it. So the next guy, I tried bulking up for speed. Look,
remember, yeah,
I've done there's nothing that within the rules that has not been tried with me. Put it like this: I've gone fat, I've gone skinny, I've gone speed work, I've done the whole lot. Bryson has that speed in his body. He's just now using it. It is going to change golf. So I've seen this over the years. Up until Rory and DJ in 2011, up onto that, every time we had somebody who was longer, okay, they were definitely undermined. In the amateur game or pro game, the rest of people would say, look, he's missed that fairway because he's a long hitter. He's missed that fairway because he's swinging too hard. Look at him. Every time he hits a bad shot with the driver, we blame speed. Whereas if a short hitter missed a fairway, nobody blames his speed.
Very interesting stuff. It's been very interesting this week listening to Paul McGinley and Padraig Harrington, Adrian, and kind of the taking away from the muscle mass that Bryson DeChambeau has amassed, and it's not even muscle mass, it's just general weight on top of that as well, and how they've actually pointed out that isn't the key here, that it isn't just about that. So if you're considering getting into the gym, Adrian, to lengthen your drive over the next little while, perhaps reconsider?
Yeah, I will, and I'll revisit that thought process. Like Harrington is so bloody fascinating. Like in the first 10 seconds of that clip, he's talking about a memory of like a nondescript German player, like banging one off the tee at 191 club speed, and the recollection, the detail of the recollection that he has about what went on the driving range, like last year, is pretty incredible. And yeah, DeChambeau, obviously, I mean, I'm not a golf aficionado in the way that our golf weekly friends are, but I watched a good bit of the back nine last Sunday night. I watched DeChambeau, and he, 3 shots to go, 3 holes to go, he's 3 shots clear of the field, and he's bombing it off the tee. Like, they're talking about his club head speed, and that he's always had it. Like, once he makes contact with that ball, he's flailing. Like, the club is flailing behind him. His feet are all over the place. He's like taking a step backwards in a way that you see any of us do when we go out for a knock around a golf course, that you're trying to get a bit of extra speed and a bit of extra force behind the ball, and you're all over the place. But he's doing this when he's like 3 shots up with 3 holes to play in a fairly significant golf tournament. I just thought, like, I mean, I know nothing, right? But like, take an iron out, bash it down the fairway, get yourself home, like you're home and hosed here. Just keep it nice and safe. And by the way, it wasn't as if he was hitting like fairways in regulation at that point. He was like wayward as all hell. He was like putting himself in all sorts of trouble. Like, people watch golf nuts watch golf because they love it and they don't really care what happens. But then the vast majority of the rest of the audience is watching because they want to see Tiger Woods win it by 20 shots and like steam ahead of the field, or they want to see somebody implode. And I think that actually, looking at him in any given round, he's got the capacity to do either. So, like, whatever happens, he's going to be, brand DeChambeau is going to be entertaining for years to come, I would think.
For sure. We just want to touch on the FAI this morning as well. I should mention as well, you can get the full Golf Weekly podcast now on the OTB Sports app. Just one more thing on the FAI. Philip Quinn, back at the Irish Daily Mail this morning, uses the quote, "It's privatisation of football in Ireland by stealth." So this is Fianna Fáil TD Mark McSharry called in his government colleagues last night to reverse the small print of the Memorandum of Understanding, which was obviously signed as part of the financial rescue deal for the FAI. This Memorandum of Understanding is now officially the battleground, it seems, for the next little while. So you've got Catherine Martin and Dara Cleary, who obviously are the ministers with responsibility for sport. Catherine Martin, obviously the minister, and Minister of State is Dara Cleary. They stood by the absolute essential details of the Memorandum of Understanding. It was interesting that while the people on the other side of the fence were preparing a statement last night, the government got out ahead of them to get their statement out to say that it is absolutely essential. But McSharry has essentially broken party ranks. He said, "I'm calling on the government to urgently reverse the situation. In my opinion, it is the privatisation of football in Ireland by stealth," which is the headline. So under the Ross FAI deal, the current 8-4 split and the board will become 6-6 when it becomes from outsiders to insiders, essentially people who've been with the FAI all their lives. In terms of what Martin and Cleary have said, they've noted with alarm recent media reports of FAI infighting at board level as well. And Philip Quinn's got a great piece on the inside of the Irish Daily Mail this morning as well, how it's advantage Barrett in FAI civil war. And one of the things that has been known throughout this entire thing, but it is important to mention again, Adrian, is that a 75% vote is required at the EGM to approve the terms of the MOU, which is a big number and is by no means a gimme. It had seemed that this is something that everybody had taken for granted at the start, but this has changed quite a bit, and the two parties here are at loggerheads to see how the FAI proceeds on an administrative level. It's a huge story, Adrian, and it's hard to know who's actually going to come out on top in this.
Well, like, it's given everything that's happened, obviously, with the FAI over the last number of years, and particularly the last year, and the clean slate that we were all assuming that we were heading into, like, doesn't any longer seem to be the case. And like, part of the difficulty is we don't know. Like, the FAI are not actually managing the message in a way that they should be at the minute. We're not really that sure what's going on behind the scenes. We're not really that sure what the plan, which is the essence at this point, is for the League of Ireland. Like, where is the money going to come from? How are they going to manage? How are they going to see the clubs through? There's been a lot of somewhat baked ideas been put out there that I'm not sure how sustainable they are. I don't know how road tested they've been. It seems like, if you believe everything that's been coming out of the ministers last night and today, that like the FAI could be in danger of missing out on 19 million quid of the 32 million that were given as part of a rescue package if they don't make some tweaks to you make whatever tweaks are required to secure the future of the association and secure the future of the League of Ireland, I would have assumed. And you know, if there are reasons why that's not possible, let's hear them. I do think they're not managing the message particularly well, and I think that people are now concerned about the FAI in a way, as I said, that we all hoped was going to be a thing of the past.
Yeah, we should say all GAA activities as well, to finish up on another story. A number of GAA activities at a Cork club, which you've been mentioning, Adrian, have been suspended due to a potential coronavirus case. So you got players from the clubs in the Carbery division. They've been reported to have come into contact with a person who has since tested positive. Now, in a statement on their Facebook page, Argentine Rangers have confirmed they are one of the clubs. So it's the big detail this morning, and has stopped all activity until Saturday at the earliest. That's right. All GAA activity at a number of Cork clubs have been suspended. So this is the murky waters that people are going to find themselves in over the next little while if players test positive for coronavirus, and the sheer depth of clubs around the country and the challenge matches that are underway, the challenge matches that have been played, adds a whole other layer of complication to this. That, like, if one player tests positive from a club, who is to say that the players that face that team in a challenge match are now safe? Like, I mean, like, should we be entering a place now where the next step is coming back to last week's conversation, mandatory temperature checks, the safety of the player, the actually ensuring that there isn't going to be transmission on the field of play? That's suddenly, like, I mean, it was always the priority, but looking at a story like this, it is heightened in its importance. It shows that the cases are real. These things will happen over the next few weeks.
The one commonality of this entire thing is that we don't know, right? Like with coronavirus, there was more information from scientists this week about how airborne this thing might actually be, right? Which changes the game entirely. And there isn't anybody sitting in judgment about a further more communication about, you know, more developments, or we've had different advice and so we're going to change things slightly to reflect whatever. Like, I think that there's a slight lack of clarity, obviously, in relation to exactly what clubs and in a few weeks' time, or more than a few weeks' time, how counties should respond to it. Like, the entire dynamic around this thing changes constantly. The information around it changes constantly. I'd like to hear more from, you know, like, could we have regular, now that we're in a position that GAA teams are back, back training, back playing challenge matches. The Dublin Hurling Championship, Club Championship starts next week, as a lot of the championships will. Could we have more regular updates from Croke Park, for example, in this instance, about, even if it's a case of, you know, this week's update is that there's not much to say. We had a couple of cases in Cork. We're talking to the clubs. We're trying to figure our way through it. Like, it's important that we, I think, over-communicate now, rather than shut down, and rather than say, well, we made our decision on that, and we're going to stick with that, which they haven't done. To be fair, they've been good about saying that was the information at that time. Now we're changing that. But I would like to hear more of a flow of communication around this one.
All right, if you're one of those people missing your dose of Gridiron news, game reaction and analysis, be sure to sign up to our American football newsletter, OTB Club Gridiron. We've got the latest off-season American football news from both Ireland and the USA from otbsports.com, as well as podcasts and long and short-form video content, all included. Subscribe at otbsports.com/Club Gridiron and enjoy all that OTB Club Gridiron has to offer. Right, we're turning back to Manchester United last night. Andy Mitten from United We Stand, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
This seems extremely positive for Manchester United at the moment. It is extremely positive for Manchester United, there's no seeming about it. But there does seem to be a little tinge of caution about how Manchester United fans, about how the squad and the management are speaking about it at the moment. Is that caution well founded? Is there still a possibility for a downturn to happen before the really good times roll back to Old Trafford once again?
I think it's right to be cautious. Manchester United are fifth in the table, and until the lockdown, it had been a pretty poor season. There was an improvement in form since the defeat to Burnley in January, a month where Manchester United lost 4 times. And there were some pretty bleak moments this season. United dropped as low as 14th before a game against Liverpool in October. And the mood was pretty vicious. You know, I interviewed Ed Woodward, the main executive of the club. And while readers of United We Stand appreciated me grilling him, a lot of online United fans were absolutely furious that I'd even spoken to him because he hadn't signed the players that they wanted to sign. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did make his first signings at the start of the season. They've all done well. Okay, Dan James is one who's gone a little bit off the boil, but I think people back Solskjaer's judgment when it comes to signing players, and he's working incredibly hard to bring the players in for next season. And I do think that the team needs strengthening. And I spoke to the manager just before the lockdown about this, and he said we still need 2 or 3 players. And there are probably 2 or 3 players who the team need to get rid of because they earn too much money, they don't really contribute a lot. But yeah, back to your original point, it's incredibly exciting. Villa Park last night, yeah, it was freezing for July in Birmingham. But once again, Manchester United won, kept another clean sheet, and scored 3 more goals. A very young forward line, Mason Greenwood, 18, Marcus Rashford, Anthony Martial. And behind them, you've got Paul Pogba, back fit, happy, playing well, striking the ball across the field like no other player can do, not even Bruno Fernandes. And Fernandes has been the main reason why Manchester United's upturn has come since January. United have picked up 24 points in 10 games since he's arrived in the league. United can still win the FA Cup, still win the Europa League. And for all of these reasons, there is a swirl of optimism around Manchester United's fan base. Yes, Liverpool have won the league, but United were never in the race for that, and we're never going to be. And even for next season, I would have said it's pretty improbable. But the more I watch this Manchester United team, and yeah, they're only beating teams lower down in the table at the moment, but they've beaten Manchester City 3 times this season. They've actually played well against Liverpool. But I still think there needs to be a couple of new signings.
Are they, Andy, that notwithstanding the fact that Liverpool have obviously won the league, given the talent that's coming through, the younger players, the form of Pogba, Fernandes, the list goes on and on and on. Are United at this exact moment the best and most exciting team in the Premier League?
Yeah, they are, but they're also 5th in the league. And Liverpool are the current English, European and world champions. Let's get the facts right. You know, Manchester United, if the season ends now, will be 5th. They're on an upward trajectory, and it looks like a 4th place finish is on the cards, although Chelsea are winning, Leicester have fallen away. Wolves, who were a team a couple of weeks ago I really feared, they're now 6 points, I think, behind Manchester United. But there's a buzz. I mean, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is doing really well, and he got quite a lot of criticism for good reason earlier on in the season. By the start of December, Manchester United had won 4 of their opening 12 matches in the league. That's nowhere near good enough. And I told him this. I put it to him this year. The criticism was justified. A lot of it, though, was pretty pernicious. And it quite amuses me now that people who were putting a hashtag out, Ollie out, they've gone completely quiet. And I remember going to Kristiansund, his hometown, at the end of September, and speaking to his best friends and doing the type of journalism which I like to do. And I tweeted it. I said I'm in Kristiansund, and the stream of negative comments, I might start retweeting them if Manchester United win a trophy this season, because it was, he won't last until Christmas, he'll be back there soon, he's completely out of his depth. And these comments were from supposed Manchester United fans. Well, I'm sorry, he's proving them wrong, because the team not only is winning games, but playing really good football, attacking football. United are devastating on the counter-attack. They're really quick. They're young players. He's given a pathway to players from the youth system, like Mason Greenwood. Marcus Rashford's had a very good season. He's not fully clicked back into form, but while the lockdown was on, he showed what a good human he is. And when I interviewed Ole Gunnar during the lockdown and I spoke to him for 90 minutes, he gave that line, he'd rather have a hole in his team than an asshole. And that I think is evident. He got rid of the players who he didn't think contributed good things to Manchester United's dressing room, and there's still one or two who he'd like to move on. But it's all pointing towards the right direction. What Manchester United need to do this season is get in the Champions League for next season, because it'd be wonderful watching someone like Mason Greenwood or Fernandes against the best teams in the world. Ideally, win the FA Cup, which is going to be difficult because there's good teams left in it. Win the Europa League, and this season could then be judged as a success. If they don't reach the Champions League, don't win the FA Cup, don't win the Europa League, then it'd be much harder to judge it as a success, and that's largely because it started so poorly.
You mentioned Mason Greenwood there, Andy. Of all the kids you've seen come through the ranks into the Old Trafford first team, where does this guy rank? I mean, the last time we had hype like this is Marcus Rashford, but it even seems that the hype is equivalent to Wayne Rooney at this point.
Yeah, Rooney was incredible, wasn't he? He was incredible at Everton, and he cost, I think, £30 million, and it's not quite as exciting as somebody who comes through your own youth system. Wayne Rooney looked like the complete footballer while he was still a teenager. Mason Greenwood is doing incredibly well, and I've spoken to everybody who works with him each day, and they say that he can get better and better. Obviously, he's 18 years old, but he's got to have the right influences as well. He's got to train, he's got to work hard, he's got to have a stable environment, which is very important to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and creating that environment at Carrington. But he's doing that. He's now a first-team starter for Manchester United, and you couldn't have really said that 4 or 5 months ago. Dan James was the person who was playing on the right for Manchester United. The right was seen as the problem position. That's why Jadon Sancho was linked to Manchester United and still is. It's why Manchester United have been looking at players in that position. I wrote a piece last week about a young right winger at Peñarol, 18 years old. They're managed by Diego Forlan. And Solskjaer is doing detailed backgrounds on these type of players. And they might not all sign. Of course they won't all sign. But the fact that they're doing it, I think, shows a progress from a situation where Angel Di Maria came, Radamel Falcao came. Do I think the Manchester United managers at that time did months of research into them? Or do I think that an agent called up and said, would you be interested in signing Falcao? I think it was the latter. And along with Bastian Schweinsteiger and other big-name players, such as Alexis Sanchez, it just didn't work out. But what Solskjaer's doing now, it is working out, because it is all about results. The team are winning, but they're playing really good football as well. And I think one reason Manchester United have this global following is because traditionally and historically, they've been renowned for good attacking football. And we're seeing it again now, and about time too.
When it comes to the summer acquisitions, was last night something of an audition for Jack Grealish?
Yeah, I heard that said. I don't think he's good enough to get in the team. At the moment, I don't think he had a good game. He had a really good game at Old Trafford in November, in a 2-2 draw. And a lot of United fans were citing him as the type of player the team is missing. All action, draws players towards him, creates space around him. Has obviously got a goal in him. But I didn't think he had a good game last night at Villa Park. I think it was difficult for any Villa player because United was so devastating, A, in possession, and B, when they countered. I'm not sure if he was 100% fit. I think Jack Grealish is a very good player, but I would be surprised if he came to Manchester United, because there's good players being left out at the moment. Fred is coming on off the bench. Scott McTominay is coming off the bench, and they are more defensive than Jack Grealish. Everyone has a price, don't they? If Aston Villa go down, then Jack Grealish's price is going to drop considerably. And there's also a new economic reality in football. And Ole Gunnar Solskjaer touched on that last week. I don't think you're going to see the ridiculous transfer fees that we've seen in the last couple of seasons, because clubs have been burning through money with having A, no games, and B, no fans at games.
The thing with that as well, Andy, like, is it true that Manchester United will perhaps be more insulated from the financial wreck that is going to be bestowed upon football over the next little while? Like, they are, of course, going to lose money, but perhaps they will lose less money, relatively speaking, than other football clubs around Europe. Potentially, they might be on a pedestal when it comes to splashing the cash this summer in a way that, say, Liverpool will not be able to do. Like, as you say, the Jadon Sancho links are still out there. They're not going anywhere. Like, you had a ridiculous report from Argentina last weekend that Manchester United are in the market for Lionel Messi this summer. They're still being talked about in terms of splashing big money this summer, that they might get the benefit of a little bit more insulation than other clubs.
Yeah, they will do, because commercially the club have been successful for a long time, and they've still got those commercial deals on top of the television deals. And the gate receipts are going to be down, but the club have been really good in refunding season ticket holders. They've been good throughout the whole pandemic, and that's not something I've always been able to say about Manchester United's public relations. And so, yeah, the best of a bad bunch financially, if you like. But I think there's even uncertainty at Manchester United, because the club don't know when fans are going to be allowed back into the stadium. It does United's brand, if you like, no harm at all when the team are playing as they are playing. Liverpool have really improved commercially. I mean, they're the second biggest club in England, and a long way ahead of the rest. And if you look in terms of global support, Manchester United and Liverpool are absolutely massive. Liverpool have been quite smart. They took a long time to develop Anfield, but they have done it. They're continuing to do it. They're doing the Anfield Road end as well. And Liverpool are the team to be beaten at the moment. But Liverpool are not the type of team who go out and spend the type of money that Dortmund would want for Jadon Sancho. They tend to operate in a bracket below that. And Jurgen Klopp's such a good manager that he improves those players. But Solskjaer goes for the young English if possible, but he will look globally for players. I do think United will make signings, but you're not going to see a splurge. Bruno Fernandes's budget came out of the summer budget, and it will help United's position if there is a taker for Alexis Sanchez, if Chris Smalling, who's had a really good season at Roma, goes, if Phil Jones is sold. I mean, he's a Premier League standard player. There's no reason why someone shouldn't buy him. Same for Jesse Lingard. He's fallen completely out of favour with Manchester United fans, but could Jesse Lingard do a good job for, I don't know, Southampton or Everton or West Ham? I think he could, playing football every week with his confidence up. This is a player who played in a World Cup semi-final 2 years ago. So would someone pay £15 million for him? They should do, but at the moment that comment looks stupid because he's not been playing. He earns a lot of money. Marcus Rojo earns a lot of money. So best case scenario is for Manchester United to move these players on, and then I'm going to fall into tabloid cliche here, say bolstering their war chest in terms of bringing someone in like Sancho over the summer, because the first 11 looks really strong at the moment, and even certain areas of the team on the bench look really strong, like central midfield. But yeah, it's still a couple of players short. And Odio Nigolo, really good loan signing. He is only a loan signing, so. It still needs those 2 or 3 players, because Manchester United have not put a serious title challenge in since Sir Alex Ferguson left the club, and that's disgraceful for a club of Manchester United's size. Okay, the team and fans were spoilt by success up until 2013, but it's still the club with the biggest wage bill in the Premier League, second biggest in world football behind Barcelona, and to be 5th and so far behind Liverpool showed the underperformance of this season.
Andy, just finally and briefly for me, the performance of Paul Pogba last night, very good again last night, and been very good obviously since the return, part of that extremely effective midfield, very good when he spoke after the game about the work rate. Like, his stock is high now, so either United decide that he is a long-term part of the club and that his attitude is right and his work rate is good and that's good enough for them now, or they take the opposite view that his stock couldn't get any higher and it might be a good time to sell him. What do you think happens with Paul Pogba now?
I don't think the stock market for footballers is that high, and there's a queue of Real Madrid's offering 150 million euros for somebody like Paul Pogba. I love watching him play football when he's fit. I loved some of his passes across the field last night at Villa Park. He looks happy, he looks fit, he's had a bad season because he's not been playing. And from his perspective, the dream which he was sold in 2016 when he came to Manchester United never materialised. But it's starting to now. He wants to play with world-class players. Bruno Fernandes is looking like one. If Paul Pogba is not excited about the emergence of Mason Greenwood or the improvement in Anthony Martial, someone who really looks up to Paul Pogba, then he shouldn't be on a football field. But he is. He's playing well. I think he will stay at Manchester United, and I'm happy about that. I think his professionalism has never been doubted. When I've spoke to him, he's always been completely polite. But there is another side to the story. When his agent and him have suggested that they want to leave the club, that's not a good situation because he's such an important person in the dressing room. It's very difficult for the manager when his most influential player in the dressing room wants to leave. But he's got a good relationship with Paul Pogba. Ollie's never spoken ill of him publicly. But there's a bit of an iron fist with Ollie as well when he needs to be with his players. And it's all coming together. And wins just smooth over everything. If the team would have lost the last 5 matches, we wouldn't be talking like we are today.
Andy Mitten, good stuff.
Thank you.
Andy Mitten of The Athletic and United We Stand there on the line. Right, we've teamed up with 20 by 20 to give our female listeners a chance to win 3 weeks of training advice and mentoring from Mayo and AFL legend Sarah Rowe. To be in with a chance of winning, just send us a 10-second video of what training you'll be doing and why you should win. WhatsApp the video into the OTB WhatsApp number. That's 0879 180 180. That's 0879 180 180. This latest chapter from 20 by 20 is focusing on the importance of participation. No proving, just moving. Right, we are back talking Liverpool with Caoimhe O'Neill of the Liverpool Echo right after these.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Looking for a football show with a bit of a twist?
So I know the likes of Griezmann's big into his fashion.
You wanted a lot. One question he actually asked me was, could he make his studs light up when he runs?
Team 33, the football magazine show for the football purists.
Yeah, the Nike Mercurials from 1998. If you just show that boot to an entire generation of people, and they just get instantly nostalgic and remember everything from that era.
The very best interviews with the cult heroes of the past and a look at the cultural side of football. Team 33, live at 9 p.m. every Friday on OTB Sports Radio. Live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Missing this? When that didn't materialise, I think both Paulie and myself probably looked at each other and kind of thought, what next?
And get this, the all-new OTB Sports app. Off the Ball, Ireland's premier sports channel, now has a new home, featuring the biggest names in Irish and world sports. Podcasts, interviews, news, commentary, analysis, plus almost 20 years of sporting archives. All free and ready when you are, at home or on the go. The new OTB Sports app. Download it now from the App Store and Google Play.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
You're welcome back. OK, so Liverpool still in search of that points record in the Premier League. They're playing Burnley tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Caoimhe O'Neill is a senior football writer with the Liverpool Echo and she joins us now. Good morning, Caoimhe.
Good morning.
What have the last few weeks been like in Liverpool, first off?
Crazy would be the word I'd describe it as. Obviously, Liverpool have waited 30 years for this as a team and as a city. So obviously the celebrations have been somewhat muted. A lot of house parties obviously going on across Merseyside. I think it's been almost difficult because fans haven't been able to sort of, congregate with what's happening in the world. But obviously we know that's so important with what's happening. And so it has been really this feeling of excitement. But again, Liverpool fans can't wait, as Jurgen Klopp said, to all come together for hopefully a parade in the future.
Yeah, it does feel different to literally any other previous Premier League title, but at the same time there is the human tendency to compare previous teams with current teams, and that comparison is always going to be there. With Liverpool it was the case with the Arsenal team until Watford came along and beat them. It is the case with every team who've won the Premier League now. If Liverpool go on and get this points tally, as much as Jurgen Klopp says records don't matter, it kind of does. I think in the wake of what's happened this season, being the team who've got the highest ever tally of Premier League points would be an incredible feat.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with with Liverpool currently, battling Man City for the past couple of seasons, I think, it's important that they get that record just to sort of, there's nothing else to win now. They've won the Premier League, they won the Champions League last year, the Club World Cup, the champions of Europe, the world, and now England after such a long wait. I think, the record is in sight, and Liverpool will definitely want to chase that down just to sort of, have that over Man City going into next season, which, is now none of us really know what sort of season we're going to. Liverpool fans think, can they walk it again? And obviously City will be hoping to get back into it. You're seeing teams like Chelsea, United, their sort of resurgence, and it's going to be very interesting going forward. But right now, Liverpool have got 4 games left to play, and they want to get over that 100 points barrier. So, it's definitely something that they'll be working hard for. The performances in recent weeks since the lockdown haven't been great. Obviously, it started with the draw with Everton, and then Crystal Palace game was really good. Liverpool just, I think that was their title winning match. Obviously, the next night City got beaten, that won them the league. But I think that performance was really, really cool from Liverpool. It was brilliant. And then again, they've still won, but they haven't necessarily performed in the way they've been performing all season. But they're still putting points on the board, and I wouldn't really worry too much when you've got players like Virgil van Dijk, whose level never seems to drop, even if those around him are flagging a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look at that squad and what they might potentially do with it in the summer. Like, we were just chatting to Andy Mitten about how Manchester United are insulated in terms of the financial impact that might fall on the club. But at the same time, Liverpool are insulated from the fact that this is going to be a short transfer window coming up. You want to be going into this transfer market, or a shortened time between seasons, I should say, but you want to be going into this summer with the best squad possible. And there is still an argument to be made that Liverpool have the best squad possible in the Premier League, despite how good Manchester City have looked in recent weeks. Like, having those tools at your disposal, having a depth chart that looks as good as it currently does for Liverpool, the timing of that couldn't be better, because if they can't get the chequebook out this summer, or don't have the time to get the chequebook out this summer, they're going to be okay.
Yeah, I think that's the feeling as well. This team's still pretty young. Obviously, Virgil van Dijk turned 29 recently, and that is kind of like, he's still got centre-backs go for 36, so he's still got a good 7 years in him. The rest of the squad are around about, a little bit younger. Obviously, the front three, I think they're all aged 28 now, so, they're still in the prime as players, and I feel like we've got now, this recent weeks have shown us that Liverpool have got a brilliant academy system in place, and, players like Curtis Jones, Harvey Elliott, Nico Williams are all coming through the ranks there. And that Jurgen Klopp mentioned that earlier this week about saving money in the crazy transfer market, because it is crazy, and it's likely to maybe be almost muted this summer because of what's happening financially with the coronavirus. So if Liverpool have got someone like Nico Williams, who played at left back the other night, to fill in, then do they need to go out and spend 30 million on a left back? Probably not, because this young lad's come in and he's looking good. So I think Liverpool will look to save money in that way, and they all look like real talents. And I feel like this summer and even last summer, once Liverpool had got their sort of spine of a team together, the signings of Van Dijk, Alisson, Fabinho, those kind of players, I think it was always sort of set up for, I think it was always Klopp's plan for, this will be the team. They'll bring one or two other players in. But now you're looking at Adam Lallana will be leaving, but it's likely that Curtis Jones will maybe fill in the minutes that Adam Lallana had this season, next season. So, I don't think Liverpool necessarily need to go out and splash the cash like, say, Chelsea are doing, because they've got the, probably the best, if not the best team in the world right now. So next season, it feels like they can go again, and then maybe, departures happen next summer and different things. Maybe they look to get a little, a couple of transfers in to then go on to the next few seasons. But this definitely feels like, something that's just not going to be next season and wasn't this season and last season. It feels like something that's going to happen for a long time. When Alex Ferguson got United working, you felt like, that was a period of just, dominance. And Liverpool, you feel, are coming into that. Obviously, they've got some very, very good opposition there. But, it does feel like such a good time for Liverpool, and, Liverpool fans will welcome it.
Yeah, and I think that the neutral fans as well will welcome any challenge to that Liverpool team if we see a bit more of the teeth of, so to speak, both literally and figuratively, of Jurgen Klopp, like we saw after the City game as well. It'll be interesting to see how he reacts to that. But just the impact on the City, Caoimhe, like we saw obviously in the immediate aftermath after clinching the title, the flare into the Liver building. We saw the flare at Dixie Dean during the week as well. Like, is there a tension about that lid that's been kept on people in terms of trying to be able to celebrate like this momentous thing is creating a bit of tension, or were they just a couple of isolated incidents that won't be repeated?
I think you've got a spot on there. I think it's isolated incidents. It's a few bad apples who are just, putting a bad name on an entire fan base, and indeed the City. It's not welcome. No, I've not seen any Liverpool fans welcome that. The scenes were disgusting, and especially earlier this week with Dixie Dean, that's not on. That's not welcome in our city. It's not how we operate. As you well know, Liverpool's one of the friendliest cities in the world. It's so diverse. Stuff like that just isn't welcome here. So, scenes like that, you do feel and hope that they are isolated, but, you just hope going forward now, maybe the reaction to both of those incidents, that people will think about their actions more. And then, because it is a couple of people putting a bad name on a whole fan base and a whole city, and that's not right, is it? So obviously, Liverpool fans want to celebrate, and there will be time for that. So I think they've just got to be patient right now. But it's such a unified city. If you've visited Liverpool, you'll know that, and that's what we want moving forward. We've got two great football teams here and two amazing fan bases. So, hopefully scenes like that aren't repeated, and the people that were responsible for those actions now, have took a long, hard look at themselves and realised, this isn't welcome here.
Okay. One of the most interesting stories around doing the rounds on the back pages this morning is about the possible return of fans to Premier League stadiums and sports stadiums in general in the UK from the middle of September when the season gets back. There'll be masks and various other measures, I'm sure, that'll be in place. It was a bit surprising, I have to say, from our side of the water reading that this morning. Like, we're very much in a very different place, I think, in terms of where the coronavirus is at in society at the minute. And it was even more surprising maybe seeing that it might be a possible thing in the UK soon. Is it surprising to you? Is it an expectation? Is it something that people are talking about, that there's a push on to get fans back in?
Personally, speaking for myself, it worries me a little bit. I wouldn't want fans to go back in the stadium if they're not safe yet. If the numbers come down, the numbers are still high here, and I think if there's no new cases and things like that, then we should start thinking about getting fans back into stadiums. Look, it's something that we all want. Football without fans is nothing, and I think you've seen that watching the games from home. It just even with the crowd of noise effects on, it's still not the same. The crowd even adds so much just for from watching at home. Fans are desperate to get back in. Liverpool fans would be having a great time now. They would have had 7 Guard of Honours. That's the most ever. The fastest of 30 wins. They wanted to be there to win as well, and to see them players get across the line, and that hasn't been possible. So it has been hard. But I think in terms of, obviously, the pubs have reopened and stuff like that, I just think personally for me, as if things are safe, then start doing that. But the numbers are still up, there's still cases, and you worry about like a second spike and stuff like that. So for me, that's a concern, and I wouldn't want, obviously we know what happened when Atletico Madrid supporters came, and then there was a couple of weeks later there was a spike in Liverpool, and so things like mass gatherings, I think we should still air caution on the side of them and just see what's going on. Obviously, if there's so many thousand allowed in and the 2 meters apart or whatever, then that could be a possibility. But it's just such an uncertain time for all of us, isn't it? It has been for the past 4 months now. None of us never knew that this was going to be the way the world would be now. And I think the most important things is people's lives. Football is obviously our passion, but people are much more important, and I wouldn't like to see more cases on Merseyside and across England and wherever else.
Caoimhe, thanks a million for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Caoimhe O'Neill there of the Liverpool Echo chatting about Liverpool. They're playing Burnley tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Right, it is 9:24 on this Friday morning. Just a reminder that OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. We don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. Right, Roscommon's Mt Rushmore is next up this morning with John Caulfield and Sheahan Curran. But before we get to that, this week's episode of Off the Bench is pretty good. Mimi Troy is the former Leicester and Belfast Roscommon star, joins Cleaner Foley on the podcast, which is available right now on the OTB Sports app. Here's an idea of what you'll get.
Obviously, I'm mixed with black and white. I'm proud of both of my heritages, but obviously I see that there's such an injustice that it's very one-sided, the injustice. So I think it's really important just to stand up for what you believe in. I think, especially in Ireland, people say that there's no racism in Ireland, and there is. Would I label Ireland as a racist country? No, I wouldn't. But racism definitely does happen here, and I wanted to show, I wanted to educate people and see that racism does happen here. I wanted obviously to stand in solidarity with what's going on in America at the moment. And I don't think in Ireland and probably the rest of Europe, we just haven't really been educated on, the twisted and deep oppression of Black history. And I think the only way to do that is really to try and educate yourself, and even just reflect on yourself and think, why haven't I spoke out on this? Why haven't I maybe posted something on social media? Is it because I don't want to get too political? Is it because I don't think my voice matters? So, it's important to address those feelings, and that's why I wanted to do this, was to just to show what I feel about it. This is what I think. I wanted to voice my opinion, and obviously being part Black, it holds very dear to my heart.
And what has been your experience? Have you ever experienced direct racist comment in your life?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think again in Ireland, people, their banter is very passive, casual racism. Yeah. And they think, it's all this banter, but it's at whose expense? I think my first experience with racism, I was only 6 and I was in senior infants, and I threw my apple into the bin, and I remember my teacher telling me, get that out of the bin and eat it. Your people in Africa are starving for that. And to say it to a 6-year-old, it was awful. Growing up, my mom would have put my hair in like little bandeau knots or little twists, which I loved. And some people in class in my school would say to me, "Oh, your hair looks like little turds. It looks like little turds." And if I would say something back, I remember, again, I am my father's daughter, and I'm very, very quick with the L's. I find it hard to hold my tongue at times. And I would say back, yeah, well, I mean, your hair looks like piss, or your hair looks stupid, and then I'd get in trouble for saying that. But I would say, well, they just told me my hair looks like turds, and you haven't said anything to them, and they said, oh, Marion, like they're just joking. Everything was always kind of just a joke.
It is time for Roscommon's Mt Rushmore. It is county number 28, 29 at this point, so we're reaching the end of the road, but it doesn't mean the quality is dipping. We've got 2 fantastic contributors today. We've got John Caulfield and we've got Sheahan Curran. John, first of all, you're with us, I think. How are things? A very good morning to you.
Lovely and sunny down in West Cork, so yeah, all good.
Brilliant stuff. I was just about to say that in terms of your sporting credentials, they might be more closely aligned with Cork City. So give us the picture on Roscommon. You're a former Roscommon minor.
Yeah, well, I was there anyway. Yeah, I suppose like everything else, obviously I grew up in Roscommon. My parents still live there, thankfully, in Lake Harrow. And so I moved to Cork at 20, and obviously I've played all my soccer in Cork. So, but underage, like I would have played in Roscommon football mainly. I would have played some soccer, but football was obviously the main game. So I would have played with the local club, St Dominic's. I would have been inside the town in Roscommon, played with Roscommon Gaels for a little while as well. But yeah, sure, Roscommon would be a strongly GAA county. So yeah, that was it. So obviously, I've lived in Cork then for the last West Cork actually for the last probably nearly 35 years. So, yeah.
It's a bit of a nostalgic feel then, I presume, when you're looking back at all the candidates for your Mount Rushmore today.
Yeah, because obviously, at that time, my dad would have been very strong in the local GAA club, and he'd have brought me to all the county games. So, I think from about 72, 73 onwards, I was in Croke Park literally every year. We'd go to all the games, particularly the Roscommon matches. So there was a lot of players, and Roscommon did a 4 in a row in Connacht from 77 to 80. So they were all massive occasions when you were a young teenager growing up. So I'd have been at all those matches. So a lot of heroes in those teams for me. So yes, that's the way it was. And so obviously, of course, I have a brother as well. He was born and reared in Roscommon as well. So even though he moved to the States since, but lots of connections there, obviously.
Who was your hero if you had to pick one from that Roscommon team?
Well, obviously the standout would have always been, of course, Dermot Earley, because he was, that was an incredible team of, the McManuses, particularly Tony and Eoin and John O'Gara and John O'Connor and all these fantastic lads. But Dermot Earley was obviously the standout, and I think he was everyone's hero in that era. And but then close to the home in the village of Knockcrockery, the only man that lifted the Sam Maguire for Roscommon was Jimmy Murray. And when I was growing up, Jimmy, or James as we used to call him locally, he would have been involved in under 12 and under 14 teams when I was growing up as my trainer. So obviously he is a special bond, for me and for the area. And I suppose the fact that Roscommon have won All Ireland since.
Jimmy Murray is going to be somebody, I think, that is going to make this Mount Rushmore. Spoiler for anybody out there. How well remembered is his name in Roscommon GAA circles and in Roscommon sporting circles as a whole?
Well, look, he was the main man, because I think if you look at he owned a pub in Knockcrockery. His son owns it now. But if you go into his pub and you see the football he has still the football hanging from the ceiling from one of the All Irelands, all the photos of the games from 43, 44, 46, and so he's an iconic figure, and everyone that is from Roscommon, they all know who Jimmy Murray is, and anyone stuck in GAA knows exactly that he was the top man, because when you win so few All Irelands, and he was the captain to win the only 2 that Roscommon have won, well, that tells its own story,
For sure. Shane Curran, you're with us. How are things?
Good morning. Apologies there, lads, about the late arrival. Skype is giving me trouble. Deliveries are giving me trouble. So apologies. Just picked up on John there speaking about the late, great, iconic Jimmy Murray. And yes, I think if we could carve Jimmy out of stone again and have him back in our land of the living and the world in Roscommon, we would have him a tremendous man. And many a good night was had in his bar coming back from Athlone Town, Cork City matches and so on and so forth, and matches all over South Roscommon, North Roscommon, and it was as John said, they're a fantastic place to go for a bit of crack and a sing song. And Jimmy was truly and wholly an iconic man, but a brilliant figure as well. And I'm sure with John from Knockcrockery there, he had many a good time in it in his youth.
It was as much to do with the character that he was as the player that he was then.
Jesus, he was a fabulous character. I mean, we used to always look for. We'd never passed Jimmy Murray's coming home from a match or coming home from anywhere you were, if you were that part of the world. It was into Jimmy. He could always regale you with a story about matches, and he loved fellas that were hard. He loved the hard guys. He loved the hard players. He never really lamented or looked back on his own career. He never even talked about his own career. It was always about the lads of today and the young fellas growing up and how he wishes he could see them winning an All Ireland again, and maybe that should have, and blah blah blah. And he was just great. And then he'd crack an old song with a sing song maybe late in the evening as well, if there was a few beers too many maybe, and everyone got a little bit raucous. But it was a great place. And as John said there, the football was hanging from the ceiling. John Murray has it there now, and it's always a great sight. And it survived a it survived actually a fire, the famous ball, and in Jimmy's, and still there to this day. And of course, in my own youth, I was fortunate enough to have a lot of Jimmy's playing colleagues in Castlereagh. JP the Doc O'Callaghan, Larry Cummins were two iconic figures as well. So all those stories had interconnections right throughout the county.
Yeah, and it's interesting that we've obviously two GAA and League of Ireland presences this morning as well. We were trying to establish a bit earlier on just with John Sheahan in relation to Roscommon and what sort of a county it is exactly. Is it, I mean, GAA sort of, despite both of your own CVs, is it GAA start, middle and end?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Shane, go on.
No, it probably is in some respects. You know, I think the man on the other side of the phone, you know, I know he's far too humble to want his iconic jaw on Mt Rushmore. But you know, John was a trailblazer, you know, in the League of Ireland, and then soccer has been really, you know, in fairness, it's been the Roscommon League has been very strong for a long time. My own home club, Castlereagh Celtic, were in the Connacht League for quite some time. But John Caulfield his name reverberates around the county when you talk about soccer in the county. The GAA obviously is established in folklore, I suppose, because of the traditional nature of it. But I'd say, John, you were exposed to soccer as well, and maybe rugby to a certain extent. But the GAA probably will be the game, I suppose, that is the most played. But soccer does still hold a fair swing in the county as well in terms of participation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, unfortunately, Shane, I have a few years than you, but so I suppose when I was growing up, yeah, there wasn't schoolboy soccer it was not existing at the time. You went into Athlone to play, and or like me, I went to school in Sligo, so I was used to it. Sligo was a very strong soccer town, but in terms of Roscommon, underage soccer wasn't established, but junior soccer was after starting off. And you know, when you go up there now, there's a lot of clubs in Roscommon have fantastic facilities, soccer facilities, and you know, it grew dramatically. But you know, obviously, and rugby as well. You know, there was clubs like Craig's, which, you know, I can still see and hear Frank Brandon, you know, promoting rugby in Craig's before anyone knew what rugby was, you know. So it was, you know, the games grew, but definitely in terms of, you know, the big picture, it was just, you know, GAA was the game, and football was the game, even though there was always people who were dedicated and promoted hurling very strongly. But football was the game, and I think there's no one grows up in Roscommon without knowing what, you know, the county team and county players like, you know.
For sure, and one of those is already up there. Jimmy Murray is our first name on the list. You've already given a great breakdown of Jimmy. So, Shane, why don't you kick us off to your second pick of the morning? Who is the next name on your Roscommon Mount Rushmore?
Well, you know, I know we're talking about Gaelic games and you know, Gaelic games has been synonymous, I suppose, in the county. But golf as well. There's a particular iconic golfer from Castlereagh, as it just has happened. It's Robert de Lacy Staunton. And Rupert would have captained Ireland, and might be a little known fact, but from 63, I think, to 72, he won two South of Ireland as well, I think, in 65 and 72, 73. An iconic golfing figure, really, and blazed the trail right across Ireland and Europe and indeed America with the Walker Cup. And he's a guy, I think, that's certainly worthy of mention in terms of another sport, you know, and things like that. We've also got Sue Carthy, who some may or may not know, but is an iconic figure in the rugby world, and has been a trailblazer in terms of bringing women's rugby to the fore, right around Ireland and further afield, and it has done great work. And I think then in football, look, I was fortunate enough over a long number of years to play with and against Tony McManus, play with and against Frankie Dolan, and some other players. Danny Murray, who'll be Jimmy's namesake, was captain of Roscommon in 1980. You have Dermot Earley, a great player as well in the past, and also the late great Jerry O'Malley, who played with Roscommon in the 60s, late 50s and 60s. But for me, growing up, and Harry Keegan in Castlereagh, he was kind of one of our heroes growing up there. I think Danny Murray, for me, was a tremendous footballer. He was out before his time. He played the game before his time. He was a wing back, a marauding wing back in the 70s, in that Roscommon team of the 70s, 80s that were quite successful. And he was just a guy that doesn't get a lot of mention. You know, probably if you're looking at a normal day player, you're looking at the likes of Jack McCaffrey type, as good if not better, and back-to-back All-Stars. So he would shade it for me among any other, and deservingly so, I think.
Right, okay.
Would you put him in, Shane, like as an ambassador of that team? Like, I mean, you said somewhat successful there. Like, that Roscommon team were unbelievable. Like, they obviously the ultimate success managed to escape them, but like only at the final hurdle on several occasions. Is he the one that you're kind of putting in as a? I mean, you mentioned Tony McManus there, another strong contender. Is he the one that you're kind of putting in as a flag bearer for that team?
Well, he's one that very little, very few people talk about. Danny Murray captained the team in 1980, and he was a player that done it on the big days. For me, as a youngster growing up, I used to love going to watch the team, as he did Tony McManus. And he was just an incredible player. Like, let's not forget as well, Frankie Dolan won an All-Ireland and kicked an iconic score to win at senior level, and was without doubt the best forward I ever played with. Left, right foot, outstanding, kicked 25 points in 2 championship matches. I think a culmination of 50 points over a championship season. I still didn't get an All-Star, by the way. But, you know, Danny, to me, while he doesn't get a lot of credit, he was way before his time. He was a fantastic player. As I said, back-to-back All-Stars. He could defend, he could attack with the best of them, and very rarely let Roscommon down, if ever. And to me, he's just a brilliant player. And he had a very long career. But because of his nature and his demeanour, he doesn't really get an awful lot of credit nationally for his achievements. But for me, he should be on the top. You know, All-Stars from the last 50 years. I've seen a team picked and his name wasn't even mentioned, which is really bizarre, considering that he was such a terrific footballer.
But he's not on your list, I don't think. Frankie Dolan's not making your list, Shane. So we've got Jimmy Murray and Danny Murray so far on your list. We will get John to make an alteration very soon. Can we just get to your third pick? Because I think you've touched on this name over the last couple of minutes in the brilliant breakdown of the contenders.
Frankie Dolan.
Oh, Frankie Dolan is on your list.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Frankie Dolan is on my list. He would have to be, because Jimmy and Danny and Frankie will be the three on my list in terms of football. And just as a wild card, I'd be looking at Rupert de Lacy Staunton, that many wouldn't know, but from a golfing background, we'd stick him up there.
Oh, so sorry. So Rupert de Lacy Staunton is also on your Mount Rushmore?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got your 4, which we've gone through here in record speed. We've got Jimmy Murray, we've got Danny Murray, we've got Frankie Dolan, and we've got Rupert de Lacy Staunton.
That's it.
Brilliant. So you set the stall out. How this works, if you're joining us for the first time here today, is that the stall has been set out. Then John will be able to make one alteration. We'll also have a final pitch in a moment. But John, first of all, your thoughts on that Mount Rushmore and how Shane has thought about it and the names he's ended up with.
Yeah, well, look, Shane has picked great people there and mentioned, a lot of good people. Obviously, Danny, and he's right there again. That team. I have huge fond memories of that team, and Danny was the captain and a tremendous wing back, and certainly underrated. And but like Shane said, Keegan, Lindsay, Kennellan, O'Gara. I suppose there were so many brilliant players in that team. Tony Mack, who was a fantastic player. But yeah, absolutely, great name. I suppose I'm shying towards Dermot Earley because I just felt he was the iconic figure. But absolutely, Danny was there. Frankie, of course, winning the All-Ireland with Bridget's, and he's the postman in Harrow at the moment, delivering the letters to my parents. So obviously he deserves a mention. and a great character. But and an interesting one in terms of in golf there, because I wasn't aware of that. So yeah, all certainly people of the highest quality, you know. Are you saying are you asking me, do I agree with it, is it?
Yes. How many of those would you have?
Well, I'm different. I've none of those. Okay, so certainly for me, the reason I went with Dermot early over Danny Murray was simply because, you know, Dermot's lifespan and what he achieved for Roscommon. I believe he had more influence on the team and in the county over a longer period than anyone on that in that team of the late 70s, 80s, and I just think Dermot was the best footballer at that time for a number of years in the county. And
John, will you talk to us a bit about Dermot, just about for people who might not be aware of him, of a younger generation, of the character, the style, as much as you can give us in terms of Dermot, because he's a name that comes up so regularly, but we never really have or take the opportunity to spend a bit of time on what type of player or character he was.
Yeah, well, I suppose the thing about Dermot, he originally came from the Michael Glavies club. He was obviously in the army, and he moved to Kildare, and he had a brother called Paul, who also was a top player, moved to Australia and played Australian rules for a while, and obviously his son is Dermot Jr., who would have played with Kildare before. But Dermot was probably midfield, centre half forward, you know, strong physical man, obviously an army guy, very disciplined, great at carrying the ball, great to score from 40 yards, 30, 40 yards, and was just a leader of the team, an inspirational player. And I suppose, you know, when you followed the county at that time, he was like the number one name on the sheet, or the number one player at the time. You know, I suppose a bit like Roy Keane with United and these type of people. He was Dermot was the guy. And, you know, while all those players, like they were, you know, they won 4 Connachts. Unfortunately, in 1980, lost to Kerry in the All-Ireland final. But they had been, you know, on the doorstep and just couldn't win that, you know, that All-Ireland. But, you know, all those players were tremendous. And but for me, Dermot just had that leadership quality, and he dug Roscommon in many situations when the game was in the melting pot, and, you know, he drove the team on to win the game. And I suppose, look, at the end of the day, I was a young fella in my teens at that stage, and while all the guys were brilliant, he was, for me, the leader and inspiration of that team, and that's why I'd give him the nod over Danny. But then again, like, you know, as Sheahan says, Danny was a fantastic player. Tony Mack, you know, he was younger probably than Dermot was probably older of all those lads at the time, and he was another fantastic player. But they all were, you know what I mean? But I just felt that Dermot had that he was the sort of the figure of the team, the father figure of the team, and always, you know, when the games were tight, he was the guy who really led the team, and that's why I give him the nod over Danny.
Well, before you make any final decisions, we want to bring in Tony Conboy here, who is a Roscommon GAA historian from Boyle. Now, he is convinced as well that Dermot Earley should be up on Roscommon's Mt Rushmore.
I'm pleased to be on here and making the case for Dermot Earley, who, for me, when you rang me about this, was the first name that came into my head to be on your Mount Rushmore, where he'd accompany a couple other military men, actually, Washington and Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt. But so I hope the lads they won't have any problem in putting Dermot Earley on the Mount Rushmore scene.
Why does he have to be on it, Tony?
Why does he have to be on it? Because he is a Roscommon legend, of course, and he began around 1965. He went to St. Mary's College, and he played for Roscommon on minor, under 21, junior, and senior in one year. I think that was 65 or 66, and then he played for 20 years after that, until 1985, when he was carried off the field in the Connacht final in Hyde Park by the opposition, who were the Mayo team, who had beaten Roscommon on that particular day. Now, I framed my kind of case for Dermot Earley in terms of, let's say, against someone else, maybe George Best. I think he had him on, or had mentioned. In terms of longevity, he was 20 years there at the top. Also, he was a tremendous professional in his professional life, where he became the Chief of Staff of the Irish Army. And he was actually in the Irish Army from '65 when he entered as a cadet until 2010 when he died. Tragically died at the age of 62. So that was 45 years, and 45 years as a former teacher, 45 years would be pretty telling. So he made a social difference in terms of a role model. If you would say George Best, now George Best was a genius of a soccer player for a short time, but Early was a player for 20 years. He made a social difference in terms of his becoming a role model. And everyone in Roscommon knew Dermot Early. Everyone wanted to meet him, get photographs with him, autographs with him, and so on. And he was equally regarded in Kildare, where he lived with the Army in Newbridge in Kildare. After his playing career with Roscommon, he won 2 All-Stars, 74 and 79, and he was in the Roscommon team of the Millennium, naturally enough. And then he managed Roscommon after his playing time, and then he went on to manage Kildare. And also between the family, then his son Dermot has a couple of All-Stars as well. His daughter, actually, Noelle, has an All-Star for ladies Gaelic football. So that house has 2, 4, 5 All-Stars, plus his brother Paul also. Now, he was also kind of regarded nationally, which is, it's few people like, we had a few there called Jerry O'Malley, who was known nationally, a famous Cullen of a player from the 1960s and 70s. Jimmy Murray, of course, and Jimmy Murray's pub in the Crockery was the heartbeat of Roscommon football, and he had kept a famous diary there, and he had tremendous memorabilia from that, and people came from all over the country if they're passing through the Crockery, hurlers, Eddie Kerr, and those kind of people, different people, and signed the book. And also, Bill Carless was another great player. He captained Roscommon Miners in 1941, having won in 39. And he was another kind of Cullen figure. And he went to New York. He had won 3 All-Ireland medals. That's the minor of 41, 43. He was actually there in 39 as well. So he won 4 All-Ireland medals. And then he went to New York in the late 40s, which we missed, and played with New York and won a league title with New York. So it's the only Roscommon man, that's Bill Carless now, to have won a league and also have All-Ireland senior medals. Now, a man I will mention here and want to mention is a lot of Roscommon people wouldn't know him, but he was an absolutely brilliant handballer, the Duxie Walsh of the 30s in handball, and he came from Boyletown here, Paddy Perry, and he holds something that an achievement that will not be repeated. He won 3 Dublin senior medals on the one Sunday. He was a member of the Garda, and the Garda won the senior football championship on that Sunday. Afterwards, Paddy was in Vegas to play hurling with them. Maybe they were short or whatever. He wasn't really a hurler, but he won a senior hurling medal. And that evening, then he won a Dublin senior handball medal, beating a man called Paddy Berry in that. So Dermot, as I said, I especially think of when he had left the army, what would he have achieved subsequently as a particular person? He would have been a candidate for, say, a presidential candidate. He could have done anything because of his reputation and the respect. He had enormous respect. You'll never meet anyone that will say a bad word about Dermot Early. They couldn't say it. They couldn't certainly say it in the company of Roscommon people. So that's my case for Dermot Early.
Tony Conboy there. So the easy thing for us to do would be to allow John to make his change and put Dermot Early up on the mountain, but we're not going for that. Shane Curran, we got to hold you to account here for not putting Dermot Early up on the mountain. After listening to that, On behalf of the people of Roscommon, you're representing your county here, not yourself. Let's not forget that, Shane. Jimmy Murray, Danny Murray, Frankie Dolan, and Rupert DeLacy Staunton. they all get in ahead of Dermot Earley. Are you sure, 100% positive, you want to do this, Shane?
No. I think all I was doing was opening up the debate. I think obviously, and you know, it'd be very boring if we were all the same. And look at Tony. Dermot Earley is the iconic figure of Roscommon football. And absolutely, Tony has so eloquently put it. A bit like maybe Chris O'Dowd, even though Chris O'Dowd's career wasn't as glittering on the football pitch. Dermot's football career and his army career obviously transcended life. As Chris O'Dowd has been a fantastic ambassador for Roscommon, may not have been a brilliant footballer, but went to minor level. But it has done great work for the context. Look, when I was growing up, Dermot Earley would obviously be the name that would be on the tip of everyone's tongue.
Get him in there, Shane. Come on, get him in there. Get him in there.
Absolutely, and no doubt about that. And look at by way of voting and things like that, I'd have absolutely no problem having Dermot Earley on Mount Rushmore. I mean, he probably could chisel it out himself. He was so strong and so brilliant. I just think that other people are worthy of debate, and that's why I throw in Danny Murray and Frankie Dolan and Rupert DeLacy Staunton, just from a different perspective. You know, it's very easy to talk about Dermot Earley, and he was absolutely iconic. But let's just let the argument evolve a little bit more. You know,
we've only 4 places up there. You're looking for you're ploughing the furrow by that a lot of other counties have gone where they're looking for 5 or 6 names. I think we've got Jimmy Murray. We're all in agreement with.
Yes, we're all in agreement. I think with Dermot Earley. Yeah.
We're all in agreement with Dermot Earley. So they're the two absolute get our chiseler underway and get that underway. So Shane, close out your list of 4. I think maybe that's what we'll do now before we throw it open. We'll throw it over to John to make his one challenge. So they're the first 2. Who are the other 2 names that you would run with, Shane, in terms of your final 4 then?
Look, I think obviously this, you know, people will debate about the longevity of players and you know what they achieved and what they didn't achieve, and you know, I mean, we've got a lot of present day players, people as well that are worthy of mention. Like Jack Carty, obviously, who was a rugby international.
Yeah, that's true.
One of the few. And Tony brought up a person there, Paddy Perry from the handball, but another man who blazed the trail in terms of handball was Mickey Walsh from Roscommon. And Mickey, I couldn't tell you the amount of titles he has. And he also was on the big court and the small court. He was equally adept at 60 by 30. I'd say that's a name you'd know, John.
Shane, we're going for a list. How many are you looking for us to put up here?
I tell you what, to be honest about it, John Caulfield has an awful lot done. I mean, John Caulfield is the record League of Ireland scorer, record Cork City scorer. He's managed at the highest possible level, European standard. You know, an iconic player, and I think we got to look outside. You know, we got to look outside Gaelic football. I mean, sport is all encompassing. You know,
Shane, can I just? You're a striker with the ball at the corner flag, trying to delay as much as possible here. We're going to need a decision to be made here on your final 4. Is Dermot Earley going on your mountain or not?
Oh no, he's on the mountain.
Oh, yeah. He's on the mountain. Okay.
He's on the mountain. Oh God, Jesus Christ! Oh yeah, no, he's on the mountain. But, you know, after listening to John and listening to Tony, I love to come here. I'm only just being a little bit, early morning banter and just trying to get the juices flowing. We have to have Dermot early on, and of course, look, just talk about putting somebody halfway up the ladder, and then maybe Dermot just passes them out right at the top. You know, Jesus, lads, don't want me down here. I never believed there was something you never know but Dermot early.
So sorry, just...
So yeah, we have to have Dermot early on.
Is he replacing Frankie or Rupert?
Well, look at that. I'll tell you a funny story about Rupert, and just quickly for our listeners, right? This is actually He was a genius golfer now. I mean, this guy was, and I know people won't know about him, but he was a genius. But there was a young fella in Castlemaine one time, and he was out of the game, and Rupert had a 7-iron, he was practicing on the green a blower, and the ball was coming back. He was putting backspin on the ball, right? This young fella was learning the game, and he was off for about 26 or 28, and he goes over to Rupert, and he said, Mr. Staunton, he says, well, geez, I'd like to know how you put backspin on the ball. And then Rupert said to him, you know something, son, what handicap are you? He said, 20 years. But he said, son, it's very important that you learn to put the ball forward, not back. So that was his way of telling the young fella to get back practicing, you know. So I don't know, really. I don't know. I don't put Frankie Dolan on it. He's my era. He's my era. We won an All-Ireland together. I think he's one of the greatest forwards I've ever seen playing, one of the greatest players I've ever seen playing, and he won an All-Ireland.
So it might be the first county that we have to throw this open up into a public the way we're going here. John, we've got two names that we know are definitely up there, and there's been strong cases made, I think, after that for Frankie Dolan and for Rupert DeLacy Staunton, who is a name that I had not heard of before this morning, but I know now chapter and verse.
We better throw Chris O'Donnell in there now as well, lads. I mean,
we're going to put Ming Flanagan in there if we went right.
No, Ming could not kick the football, right? So he couldn't play nothing, and he was just. Ming is a good talker, but hey, we're not putting him up on the foot on no.
So we just need to. We're running out of time here. So just for clarity's sake, we're putting Dermot Earley, Jimmy Murray, Danny Murray, and Frankie Dolan. Is that anecdote by way of politely saying Rupert DeLacy Staunton is not on your mountain? We just need to get a final answer now, Shane.
Well, look at lads. In the interest of fairness, I absolutely have to have Frankie Dolan on it. We have to have Frankie Dolan on it. Yeah.
Okay.
So poor old Rupert, and his 7-iron is gone. So, okay.
He's gone. Right. So John, it's over to you then. Shane's Mount Rushmore is Jimmy Murray, Danny Murray, Frankie Dolan, and Dermot Earley. You have the opportunity to take one of those names off and put one of your own on. What are you going to do?
Well, in fairness to Shane, he's after playing a blinder there, and I would say that look, there's a couple of guys, and Shane mentioned obviously in the modern era, you know, Jack Carty, the fact he's an Irish international and he's still playing at the moment, and obviously that the girl from Caoimhe O'Neill, she won a European Championship in boxing, so she's starting out for a career. But I suppose I'd like to throw one in of you know, Crockery has a lot of great contenders, but there's a man at Kilcline, a guy called Brian Kilcline, who lifted the FA Cup in 1987 for Coventry, and he was the captain, and his dad is from Gailey in Crockery, so all his first cousins live in that area, and he used to come home in the 80s to Crockery in the summer holidays, and he'd be up at the Gaelic pitch. So, like, while he was born in England and he played all his soccer career in England, his dad is from Crockery. His mother actually is from Mayo. She's related to Jason Doherty, who played football for Mayo. But so, like, he's a guy that would have visited Roscommon. But would that be included, lads?
It's up to yourselves, really. Yeah, like I was making a case for John Aldridge on the Athlone one, John. So you know what I mean. It's on the Westmeath one.
So I just throw out here something different, because his dad is from the Crockery, and obviously he was the captain when they won the FA Cup. Another lad there that probably Shane and know, Padraig Moran, prolific goal scorer, played with from the Roscommon side of Athlone, and would have played. Went to England to Hearts, or went to Scotland to Hearts, and came back and played Sligo, and was prolific for about 9 seasons, you know, and a very underrated, very unassuming guy, but did the business. And so there are a few guys out there, but obviously based on Shane's, Dermot Earley and Jimmy Murray, absolutely. Frankie is was an incredible player, and obviously the fact that Roscommon won the Club All Ireland and Bridges with Shane there won it, and Frankie was the main man. Of course, he's an outstanding player, but I think somewhere in that list, I think the fact that Jack Carty has been capped for Ireland in rugby, I think is a unique achievement as well, and that he'd have to be in there, you know.
And who are you taking off? So Jack Carty is who you want to put onto the Mount Rushmore.
Actually, I'm going to throw one in here, lads, as well, and I know I'm biased, but athletics is probably the toughest sport one of these toughest sports, any of those individual sports, whether it's athletics, boxing, any of those, the mental strength. And I'm going to throw in my own brother, Daniel or Danny. He went to the States at 16 on a scholarship, and he ran for Ireland. And, he was second in the Wanamaker Mile, the one that Eamon Coughlin had won for a number of years. And he ran in the World Indoor Championships for Ireland in 2001, and he came 8th. So he was a very prolific in athletics in terms of what he achieved. Obviously, he didn't win Olympic medals, but when he used to come home and train during the summertime, the training he would have done certainly was far superior than what I'd have done, or anyone that would have done in team sports, because that's a grueling game. So again. He wouldn't have been stand out because he wouldn't have won Olympic medals, but he ran for Ireland for probably 6 or 7 years and was national champion, and ran in the world indoors. So he had a bit of a pedigree about him,
So just to push you on your final change, then, John, what's it going to be?
Well, actually, can I throw one in there to the mix, John, before you do it? Are you there? Yeah.
Yeah. Go. Who are you throwing into the mixer?
Do you remember the big wrestling fellas one time, Big Daddy and Giant Haystack?
Yeah.
Yeah, Giant Haystack. He had his serious Roscommon connection, and Joe Corrigan, the Manchester City goalkeeper, would be related to the Towies in Ballahadreen. Now they claim to be from Mayo, but Ballahadreen is in Roscommon, and Giant Haystack would be related to the Duggans, so Derek Duggan and all that. We played football in Roscommon.
Hold on,
I don't know about
Giant Haystack's parents were from County Mayo.
Well, there's Castlereagh connections there. The Duggans are originally from Castlereagh, or originally from Mayo, but they live in Castlereagh. So I don't know how you want to just spread out the Roscommon connectivity a little bit like a spider's web, a small bit, We grasp on anything, But Joe Corrigan will be a great one there as well. He obviously played with England and that. And the Mayo wasn't going to be playing him as well.
If you're doing that, you may as well go for John Gunning from Castlereagh as well, the fella who went to Japan and became a sumo wrestler.
Just never heard of him. I heard of John. Well, actually, John, you did, right? Yeah, quick. Yeah. No, he didn't look like a sumo wrestler when I was going to school, but I think that
the nomination of Giant Haystacks completes the wildest ride of Mt Rushmore. And I'm still not 100% sure who's actually on the thing.
We don't, John, you haven't committed. You need to you can either go. You can either go with Shane's Mt Rushmore, or you can give us a change, and we will make the change for you. So what's it going to be, John?
No, I think Jack Carty has to go on go in there, lads.
And who are you taking off?
Well, like I'm trying to see. At this stage, Sheahan has about 14 picks, so I'm confused myself.
Jimmy Murray and Dermot Earley.
So I presume it's Jimmy Murray. It's Dermot Earley, and Sheahan is Danny Murray in there. And who's the fourth, Sheahan?
Frankie Dolan.
And Danny Murray.
No, I think Jack Carty has to go in there. I think we have to have some. We have to have a different sport in there.
Yeah.
So you'll take off Frankie or Danny, John? What are you thinking?
Well, I'm not going to insult Danny Murray because he was a hero of mine, along with all those other guys. But I think at the same time, Dermot was part of that team. Jimmy was from a different era. When Jimmy Murray, when Roscommon went to All Irelands. Dermot was from that era, and Frankie's from a different era. So I don't think we can have, because if we're talking about Danny Murray, I'd have to go for Tony Mack, and I think you have the same team. So I think that Jack Carty would have to go in for Danny.
For Danny, okay. So to round things off, then the Roscommon Mount Rushmore is Jimmy Murray, Dermot Earley, Frankie Dolan, and Jack Carty. I won't even ask you if you're happy with that, lads, because we're going to do a U-turn immediately.
I think we need another debate on this, to be honest. I don't really do.
I'll just ask you finally, where is the mountain going to be? Where will this be etched?
Jeez, I don't know, the top of Sky Hill, Johnny, wouldn't be a bad spot.
I couldn't quite make that out, but it was the top of some hill anyway.
The top of Scrine Hill.
Oh, Scrine Hill.
It's not too far from top of Scrine Hill, I think, is about the highest point. We're Strokestown is a fairly high mountain, Strokestown as well. But no, I think the top of Scrine Hill would be grand.
Brilliant. Well, listen, Shane and John, it's been a pleasure. Thanks a million for going through it, doing the research, and ending up with a great Final Four.
Can I just say there, lads, is that Shane in his great days, saved a penalty in 1985 and cost Derry City the league. And he wouldn't be a very popular man up in Derry, as he knows. And it was one of the days that if Alex Ferguson was in the stand that day watching Shane, he would have played with Man United, and he would have been in the top 4. But unfortunately, Alex Ferguson wasn't there that day.
And a good man for taking the penalty as well, John, of course.
Great man for taking penalties, particularly in Castlebar.
Well, listen, lads, it's been great spending some time in your company. Dermot Earley, Jimmy Murray, Jack Carty and Frankie Dolan at the top of Scrine Hill. That is it for Roscommon's Mt Rushmore.
OTB AM's Mt Rushmore.
That was entertaining, Adrian.
Oh, Jesus, that was a white knuckle ride.
It was. It's we've got a WhatsApp in here from Christopher. Says, how was Fergal O'Donnell not mentioned? Minor manager, Connacht's winning captain as player. It's a good shout. We tend to, after we have these conversations, go through some unbelievable contenders, and then some great people don't ever get mentioned. But yeah, that was a white knuckle ride. We got completely made a fool out of on the Dermot Earley front. We thought that he wasn't initially included in the list, but it was the greatest reveal of all time that actually, gotcha, Dermot Earley is on my list. So that was Shane Curran.
The list that we had no relevance really to the conversation. It materialised quite quickly.
No.
Whatsoever.
I must say, before we wrap up later today at 1 o'clock, we'll be giving you another chance to win €1,000 in our new game show, Know Your Football. The prize fund has been reset after one of our contestants answered all 15 questions correctly last week and walked away with £1,000. You can register at the link quiz.otbsports.com. That is quiz.otbsports.com. Right, this weekend on Off the Ball, on Sunday we've got live Premier League, Aston Villa against Crystal Palace at 2:15. Nathan and Damien Delaney will be watching that. And then the half-hour game is the North London Derby, Spurs against Arsenal. Stephen Doyle and Brian Kerr will be watching that one. That is our lot from us this morning on OTB AM. If you haven't got the OTB Sports app just yet, go get it. Search for OTB Sports in the App Store or the Play Store and download it. And if you missed anything this morning, you can catch it back through the AM podcast. It's time-stamped as well, and the best place to get it is on the OTB Sports app as well. We are live every weekday morning from 7:30, and Off the Ball is live from 7 o'clock on your radio tonight, and we'll be live across the day on the OTB Sports app as well. See you on Monday morning at 7:30. Bye-bye for now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.